Okay, good morning, committee. Good morning to those who have joined us here today. It is welcome to our March 2025 General and Finance meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. and confirm that we in fact do have quorum. Just a reminder that we continue to be in a hybrid setting, so we do have councillors that are participating and staff, that are participating online and in person. I'd like to confirm that our CAO, clerk, and other members of our senior management team and staff are here and present today. Also like to confirm and remind the public that if you do have public comment, please send it to the following address, tmlpubliccomment@muskokalakes.ca. And just confirming that we did not receive any for this month. A reminder that today's meeting is being live streamed and recorded on the Township of Muskoka Lakes website and YouTube channel. By participating in the open public meeting today, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and posted online. I would like to confirm that we did receive a supplementary agenda. There was 2 items. Item 9E, which is a report from the Director of Operational Services, in addition to the asset level of service study update number 2. Which was an infrastructure roadmap. And item 12E, there will be a verbal update from the Director of Operational Services on the Muskoka River watershed conditions update. And you'll have noted a fairly comprehensive presentation in our supplementary agenda. At this point, I'd like to ask committee if there's any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Okay, seeing none, thank you. Last couple of administrative things. Motions have been pre-populated with random movers and seconders to expedite the meeting, and that for voting, members shall physically raise their hand until the chair has confirmed the vote. If the vote is unclear, a verbal vote shall be recorded by the clerk, but this is not considered a recorded vote. So with that, I am now going to move on then to our delegations, and we have 2 today. And the first is our West Muskoka Food Bank, and I'd like to welcome you to the podium, please. Welcome.
Good morning.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
And welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Rebecca Cunnington, and I'm the operation manager at the West Muskoka Food Bank. And I just want to introduce to you some members of our board who are also here on support today. So I have Ellen Gingras, I always going to say it wrong, who has been with the food bank for 5 years, and she is our administration. And then we have Phil Sift, and he is the chair of the board, and he has been with the food bank for 10 years. And then we have Don Hammond, who has been with the food bank for 32 years. So actually pre-existing the food bank being the food bank. And he is our compliance officer. So first and foremost today, what we want to do is come to say thank you so much for the space that you provide for us. So we are very grateful for the sustained partnership, which allows us to continue our mission of feeding hungry people with no questions asked. For those of you who might not be aware, 25 years ago, the OPP began a Christmas food drive to help local families, officers like Don Hammond, solve the firsthand struggles of the families in our community who are impoverished. Thanks to the late Dr. Terry Shute and his wife, Marilyn, the West Muskoka Food Bank was created to help meet these ongoing needs. It's no secret that food costs have skyrocketed, and it affects all of us. But imagine being one of the 13% of Muskoka residents living in poverty, often due to a lack of affordable housing, seasonal employment, or chronic health challenges. 1 in 6 children in Muskoka experiences food insecurity. People are frequently surprised to learn about Muskoka's poverty level, since the region is more known for its affluent cottagers and celebrity visitors. Unfortunately, this usually hides the struggles of many families facing food insecurity in Muskoka. Food banks across the region face unprecedented demand and declining donations as food costs continue to rise. Poverty in Muskoka is not new, but it is worsening. I would like to share some information with you about who it is that we serve. So the food bank is available to Port Carling, Milford Bay, Glen Orchard, Bala, Torrance, Wata, Backtier, and Moose Deer Point residents. We aim to create a place of care, compassion, and non-judgment, supporting those who have difficult circumstances. Our clients come from a diverse set of backgrounds. Working with families struggling with steep rises in rent, seniors on fixed incomes who cannot stretch their pensions any further, individuals dealing with illness, disabilities, or systemic poverty, newcomers to Canada who find themselves overwhelmed by our high cost of living, those battling addictions, mental illness, and trying to find some stability. Since the beginning of 2025, we have filled an average of 33 orders per week, welcomed 21 new households, served 71 unique clients, and delivered 28% of our orders to those who cannot attend the food bank due to illness, mobility, or transportation issues. 60% of our service users order on a regular basis. We operate 1 day a week, Thursdays from 10 to 5 p.m., providing groceries purchased primarily from Fresh Mart and Bala. Our current focus is on providing core food essentials with some delivery options for those who can't make it in. We have 35 volunteers and typically 9 to 12 help out each week. Our communities are amazing and faithfully donate time, food, and funds. The Township of Muskoka Lakes provides our facility, which is the former Glen Orchard Community Center, as well as some staff, Corey Moore and Jake Vincent, who have take care of the building for us and respond quickly to any issues that arise. Several permanent residents and seasonal residents, business owners, and organizations support us in many different ways. We are constantly humbled by the generosity of our communities, and we just wanted to come today to say thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The committee, are there any questions, comments at this point? There's no ask today. This is an information from the food bank. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for taking the time to come, especially simply to give us an update and your thanks. We're going to talk a little bit about it in a few minutes, but I think in the world we're in right now, where there's so much strife and anger, it's really, really nice to be reminded that leadership doesn't just come from this table. Community building just doesn't start here. It starts in the community. And on behalf of council, certainly I want to thank all 4 of you and all of the rest of your team for the work that you do to support those who really need it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for showing up today as well. That was a unified approach. And I think we're all grateful for the work that you are doing and serving those in our community who need that kind of support. So thank you. Item 5B. Mr. Harding.
Got my whole team here with me as well. They're actually all out riding. Anyway, thank you all for having me here today. I also really want to make a special thanks to Director Colucci, Mayor Kelly, rest of the district councilors, and entire council for that matter, for helping keep snowmobiling alive in Muskoka this past year. Going into December, we were threatened with land use permits, and we needed those, especially because of the district. We crossed over about 50 properties across the region, and without the district signing off saying, yes, we allow you to touch our land, snowmobiling would have been shut down. On the flip side of that, right now we have some limited status still within the township of Muskoka Lakes. The trail through Port Carling, unfortunately, is closed. Some road running and the bridge over the from Stephen Road to James Parliament Park is a little bit suspect right now with water. By this weekend with the warm weather, unfortunately, we're anticipating all trails will close and they'll probably remain closed for the rest of the season. There's still great riding up north, Cochrane, Timmins, everything north, and people do travel a lot. They don't just ride in their backyard. In the past, we've had lots of people from Southern Ontario come because Muskoka is sort of the starting point for riding. So that's why it's so important. It's important for the community. Obviously, if you drove by something like Bass Lake this winter or saw on social media, hundreds upon hundreds of sleds any given day are there keeping those businesses alive. So it really is key As a snowmobile club, Muskoka Lake Snowmobile Trails, we're not for profit. We're here because we love snowmobiling. We want to maintain a trail network. So the more people who use the restaurants, we don't benefit. We're sort of like the food bank. In fact, we're trying to deliver to the community, but we do have a lot of added costs, and I'll talk about some of those. Interesting this year, just from a perspective of how great our season was. In the past, say 10, 15 years, Muskoka Lake Snow Trails, our groomer might have got the best year about 300 hours on the groomer throughout the season. We're just shy of 500 hours so far this year to keep our trails amazing. So that's certainly a testament to the weather and to having lots of great trails open. One of the big questions that Chair Mazan has asked is there an ask? Is there an ask? Do we want anything? We don't want anything. We want to work with you. And if there's an ask, that's really the ask. I'll comment some things, and Director Colucci helped out a little bit this winter. Many of the trails where we walk and drive across private property, we have to come down on roadways, Penwood Road, for example, here. As we get into spring, if you go down Penwood Road right now, it's dry pavement. We have to run half a kilometer down Penwood on dry pavement. Coming through Port Carling, around the curve at one point, we were having to run on dry pavement. The snowbank in front of LCBO became too large. Snowmobiles would have to come down, run down 118. If possible, going forward, and Director, I think this is more working together, figuring out ways to leave some snow on the shoulder of the road. And I know it's conflicting sometimes because we want dry pavement for cars, but where we can leave some snow for a snowmobile to run, to groom on one side of the road, is extremely important. Saves the snowmobile, saves the roadways because of studs and carbides and everything digging up the road. So the more little bits of snow we can leave on the side, and I think that's just a working relationship going forward. Many municipalities across the province do that already. They wing the snowbank down. Interesting, I was coming across through Algonquin Park from Ottawa last Tuesday, and the district says we can't run on the road allowance. Highway 60, 80 kilometers an hour. Highway, snowmobile trail. There is no separation. There's no snowbank between the two in several areas across Highway 60. Highway 141, another district road, underneath Highway 11, the snowmobile trail runs right on the shoulder. So we can do something different. We can do something better. Everyone's worried about risk and liability, but we need your help going forward. From a district perspective, and I appreciate district councillors helping keep that open. There's a bylaw in place, for those who don't know, that says we can't operate snowmobiles east of Carr Road out to Brackenrig Road. And that was because of safety issues. Unfortunately, that's actually not correct. And it says you can't operate on the shoulder. We operate in the ditch. So we need some help. There's something at the district. Am I at 5 minutes? Okay, thank you. But we need help fixing that bylaw so that we are able to stay open going forward. The only one other ask that I have, and it's not really an ask, we operate our groomer out of a district-owned lands in Glen Orchard. We lease that for $1. The district is saying to us we should be charging fair market rent. I don't know how we're really different as such the food bank in supporting the community, but somehow either we need to find some township lands to support this community and keep businesses open. We're not making money, so to charge us rent for that is difficult. Going forward, I guess to summarize, we really need to keep working with you. We need to have ongoing meetings, not in November. Let's have one in July. Let's discuss what's coming in the upper season and how we can manage going forward. We need a groomer home. We need to put up a temporary shelter. And that's it. Any questions?
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions or comments? Okay, Councillor Roberts and Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Phil. It's been a long morning. You said that need our help to work with the district, and I've been close to this and I understand that, but what do you propose? What can we as a township do to help influence the the district staff that there really appears to be no issue with that stretch of road.
In simple words, I'm going to suggest your seatmate beside you, Councillor Nishikawa, Councillor Burry, and Mayor Kelly. We need a strong voice at the district, more than myself standing up there asking as a not-for-profit organization. It's the councillors around the district table that influence district. And staff, what happened at Christmas, I believe district councillors said, staff, find a way. And that's what we really need to happen.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you, and through you to Mayor Harding. I have just to thank you for the presentation. Thanks for the update. I'm glad you had a great season. There has to be a tremendous amount of passion among the team that maintains and grooms and manages, because that season seemed incredibly short to me for all the work that went into it, but it looked marvelous, looked wonderful. So congratulations for that. A couple of quick questions. I first of all, I absolutely agree. Starting in July, starting in May, getting together, identifying what the hot spots are and who can do what to help get stuff sorted out. Part of the problem, as you well know, was dealing with it in October, November, trying to deck resources against it, trying to get things done. Let's do it earlier. I guess the one question that I would ask is, I know there are still open MOUs, not many, a couple maybe. And I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to help as you go about trying. There's still some hot spots. I still think going through town here is less than optimal. I'm sure Penwood is an issue. I think there's one up behind Ovenbird, if I'm not mistaken. Are there half a dozen places where we can get together and figure out whether we can work together to solve some of this? I don't know what we can do, but we could figure it out if we talk about it.
100%. Let me just be clear. There's no open MOUs. If we don't have a signed MOU, we're not on someone's property. There are better routes. This season, everyone will know that we're operating on, I'll call it the east side of Highway 118. Across from all the stores, we're utilizing the parking spaces. That's because a landowner said we can't operate behind their store. They don't want to listen to snowmobiles at night. I'm not sure how we change the noise or the implications of operating in front of the business or behind the business. Those are areas where we could use council's help to lobby these individuals. I do say we also need to find, and I've put some notes out to the Premier and our MPP, that we need to find ways to incentivize landowners to allow snowmobile trails. Maybe there's a credit, maybe there's a different tax rate that says, I have a trail across my property. I'm contributing to the overall economic benefit of Muskoka or Township Muskoka Lakes, and we recognize that. So here is a $200 credit on your taxes. And Dr. Donaldson, to you, to find a way, I know we can't give back, but can we have a separate rate class that does something? And that's the creative thinking that we need to do to incentivize people to have an incredible trail network, not on the roads, which then solves Director Palucci's issue, which solves everybody's issue. The more on land we can be, the better off.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bosenworth?
I'd just like to say how impressed I am with the current leadership of your club and how dramatically it has changed how things work in this in your area. The enthusiasm that they have brought to the challenges, and particularly large challenging of getting all these agreements in place, must have been just a gargantuan effort. The fact that you came to us and asked for some money and you had fundraisers, a really terrific show. And I just want, as a snowmobiler, we all appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. There's two individuals that need to be thanked in particular. Many of you meet them. We call them the Steves. Steve Elliott, who's our president of the club, and Steve Walter, who's our, I'll call him chief groomer, spends more hours in a groomer than anybody, making sure that our trails are exceptional, reroutes, works with landowners. And there was over 140, I think it is, landowners that we had to get memorandums of understanding from this year. So thankful we got there and looking forward to the future to make snowmobiling great again. Without tariffs.
Okay. We're not going to go there. Yes, nice try. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you.
For you and your team. Okay, so before we move into the actual reports section, Director Donaldson, just before I ask you to come to the podium, I just kind of comments, I guess, to the group sitting around the table and joining us online for a moment. As you guys know, every month the chairs get together, we regroup, we do a little self-reflection, quite honestly, as to what we can do differently and better. And one of the discussion points, I guess, from last month was just the importance we see in all of us. And when we do it really well, how well this works when we are asking questions, when questions are like, that's the approach, ask questions when it seemed to be asking questions. If we have a resolution, read the resolution and then have any kind of comments and discussion after. And sometimes when we get those two things blurred, particularly when we have a resolution to be read, that sometimes is when we come off the rails. So I am always tasked with having to say these things because I'm the first meeting of the month. So you may see this today and going into tomorrow's meeting, just going back to that discipline and making sure that each of us is spending the time to say, okay, is this a question or a comment? So I get tasked with suggesting that for today. And I think at this point, I'll turn it also over to Mayor Kelly. I think you had a couple of comments you wanted to make.
Thank you, and through you, and we're not gonna beat this to death. The fact of the matter is, I don't really want to particularly look backwards either. We have done, I think, a marvelous job as a council in elevating the dialogue and the discussion, the quality of the decision making. We haven't done much to keep the meeting short, but that's partly my problem. The fact of the matter is, there's so much negativity going on in this world today, and we need to look forward as leaders and step it up. We owe it to our constituents first and foremost. We are here, as I mentioned to a little bit earlier, to build communities. We are here to be leaders. And I think that means we need to go back to, maybe we've fallen prey to some of the social media and some of the news media and some of our own worries and concerns. We need to go back to just stepping it up, being leaders, being respectful of each other, being respectful of our constituents, being respectful of the process that's in place to make sure that we do our job and we do it really well. And as Councillor Mazan said, or Chair Mazan said, the three of us who chair meetings get together immediately after the meetings. We do the kind of John Madden tape. We go through what could we have done differently, better, faster, more often, less often, what did we miss, what did we not hear, to see if we can do things better. And the focus really is focus forward. I think you're going to see perhaps a little more engagement from your chairs through these meetings going forward, get us back on track, try to lift us back up into an area where I think the energy is positive and respectful. And maybe now we know why the meetings go too long, so I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will invite actually Mrs. Jeffries, please. Oh, I apologize. Just right before if you can just give me one moment, I see another hand up here.
Well, thank you. And through you, in light of this, I'm going to make a public apology to Councillor Roberts. At the last planning meeting, I fell off the rails, as our mayor has used the term, and I made a comment that I regret and that I sincerely apologize to Councillor Roberts for. And we did have a conversation immediately after the meeting privately, but I felt that it would be, in light of the new tone that we're going to set around the table, to publicly apologize to Councillor Roberts for my comment, which I regret.
Thank you. Okay. As we go on to this report, I'm going to start at each report. This one is for information, so I don't have a resolution to read. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, so it is on. Okay. Good morning, Chair Mazan and committee. This report provides an overview of the revenue and expenses for 2024. The numbers may change from this report as further analysis and the year-end audit proceeds. Also, there's a new revenue standard from the Public Sector Accounting Board that relating to the timing of revenue recognition. It's PS 3400. And we're still reviewing it to determine if there's any other adjustments that we need to make for that standard. So that might impact our year-end numbers. Our audit is scheduled to start soon or to kind of the early April timeframe. And we're hoping to have the statements by the June, July timeframe. Okay, for the report, our audit, or at the end of the third quarter, we had forecasted a $480,000 deficit. And the current report shows a deficit of $130,297. This is primarily due to being conservative in forecasting revenues. Planning, arena rentals, supplementary tax bills all came in over budget. Unfortunately, as we know, the impact of snow and snow removal has increased some of the costs in some areas. As well as the roads budget, there was snow removal in arenas and some additional other snow removal efforts that impacted other areas. Now, interestingly, even with the amount of snow that occurred in December, we had benefited from the lower snowfall earlier in the year. So our overall snow winter control budget, which includes snow plowing, sanding, salting, is over budget by about $139,000 and over the previous year by about $34,000. Now, the impact of the 23-24 freeze-thaw repairs, as well as flooding that occurred in the summer, has had a greater impact on the entire public works roads maintenance budget, with that division being over budget by about $509,000. Bridges and culverts is also over budget by about $99,000 due to the purchase of materials and some unexpected bridge repairs. All the other variances are discussed in the report. Now, for capital, year-end spend was about $11,177,393. Of that, about 7.7 related to 2024 projects. And staff of the 2024 staff have identified about 1.13 of 2024 projects that are committed to, but will carry forward into 2025. And there's another approximately 1.2 million of projects related to 2024 that got rolled into the 2025 budget or were canceled. Table 3 in the report gives a breakdown of spending by activity related to 2024. Appendix 2 shows project detail for life to date. The report in the appendix has some limitations due to processes that makes it difficult to provide complete information. The limitations have been looked at and addressed in the 2025 budget. For example, funds related to the trade-in and sale of assets do flow to the reserve, but they do not show well on that report, or they don't show at all on that report. Therefore, some of the deficits are offset by the sale of the assets that they replaced. We are also working on creating better reports out of our software for capital spending. Appendix 3 gives a detail of the reserve funds with a closing balance of $21,847,251. And that does include the obligatory reserves. If we exclude the obligatory reserves, our reserve balance is $12,794,288. And as I just mentioned, when discussing the capital, there's approximately 1.1 million of projects that will be completed in 2025 that will further reduce that balance. Also, when our year-end numbers are complete, a resolution will be brought to council to move any deficits from the tax stabilization reserve. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Well, thank you. That was a very good summary, and your report is very comprehensive. So thank you. Thank you all. Have a great day. Committee, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to you. On page 7, on the revenue variances, it reports under the license permits and rentals, the Value Community Center rentals during the year was $200,000.
Mm-hmm.
And with approximately $183,000 of amount being discounted, which represents 91%. And we all know what that is because it's in our bylaws and when we do give a discount. But I think given the times that we're facing, the restraints, and even it'd be prudent for us to get a breakdown of that of that 182,000 to understand how we are giving back to the community. 182,000 is almost a 2% hit on the tax levy. So I would hope that maybe in the future, you could sort of give that breakdown. So we're really saying, okay, oh yeah, well, for example, the food bank. I bet the food bank number is within that. And we're saying, yeah, that's a really good idea that we continue to do that. But maybe we should understand a little more about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is that an achievable?
I think so. The reports out of our software, I believe, give that amount of detail. We'd have to look at it and make sure, but I think it does. Corey's nodding his head.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. I just wanted to, through you to Gord, I think, to clarify that last bit of discussion. And where I'm going is we're not going to re-review how we allow people to use the community centers again. Like, I don't want to go backwards and have a discussion of, well, can't we squeeze out a few more dollars at this point? So I hope that's not where you were going. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
No, that's not where I'm going. It's just that there's $182,000. So, and we all agreed that, how we were going to allot that. Example, we had 280 people at the Milford Bay Community Center this weekend with a turkey dinner. And they would have got a benefit that we wouldn't have charged the Lions Club. I just want to have it listed out saying, here's 182,000 is 1.5% of our taxes increase. And here's the value more so that we're giving back to the community. Pickleball. We don't have a pickleball recreation group run by the community or by the township, but we do by the community. And we reward them by not charging the full rate. So that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? I have one question, and I was, as I was listening to your description, a lot of the impact on this budget this year was driven by weather. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I would say so, yes. Well, for public works, definitely, yes. The weather has impacted it greatly and the impacts of it.
And so if I could, so the original estimate at the tail end of last year, that 480,000, thank you, was driven by the activities of the beginning of the year, if I recall, which is the roads that were really suffering. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I guess a question for Director Colucci, is this something that, is factored into future planning? Because this would seem like a significant hit, because the other part to this was the snow load this year, and it seems like the arenas were also exposed and it added a lot of cost. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, there was about 60,000 in 2024, and I didn't look at the numbers for 2025, but the arenas did have snow removed both in that impacted both years. So.
Okay, thank you. Director Colucci?
And through you, Madam Chair. So when we're preparing our budget, we do look at prior years and we do look at the expenditures for prior years, but it is very hard to estimate, what effects the weather will have. We've had a year this year with a lot of snow and more snow than we've normally had. So, you can see from our expenditures in January and February that the snow removal is tracking much higher, but we still may be okay at the end of the year if we don't have any snow in November and December, right? So overall, we still may be within budget, but if we have a crazy November, December like we did last year, then that'll put us over. And for roads, it's really determined on the weather in the springtime, right? So if we have a nice consistent warming and we don't have a lot of freeze thaw, it just gets warmer and the snow melts, then the roads may be in better condition, not require as much repairs. But if we have a lot of freeze thaw and, you know, the roads could be affected and we have a lot more restoration to do in the springtime. And, you know, in the summertime, it's flooding that causes our washouts and road repairs. So if, you know, we don't have a lot of heavy rainfall and it doesn't affect our ditches and culverts and roads, then, you know, that'll reduce the amount of repairs we have to do. But all those are, you know, we can only base our estimates on prior years. So we can't really, you know, foresee what's happening in the future. So we do the best we can, but sometimes we're not right on the ball with that. So.
Thank you. Councillor Bosenworth?
Thank you. Through you. When I look through the variances to the budget, it is quite surprising about how large some of the variances are, both percentage wise and absolute dollars. And if you look down, for example, in the results by division, 59% off on Treasury, $276,000, 142 in bylaw officer. And I'm kind of amazed at how we can come out with a variance of only 130,000. And you know, you could say either the plan was a lousy plan or, you know, life just is totally unpredictable, when I think it's more the latter. Is it just magic that we managed to keep the variance so small? Because basically we've absorbed a huge amount of expenditures on weather-related things, but look mostly through divisional savings. And I don't know whether it's people or, you know, how did Treasury manage to be 276,000? That's a huge help to the other line. So it's a sort of philosophical question is, there's a lot of dynamics going on here throughout the year, and yet we managed to come in at a, you know, 1% variance on the reserve.
Yeah, through you. Yeah, so the Treasury one was primarily related to interest. The interest was higher than budgeted. And some of the items, there's a corresponding, you increase revenues, you increase expenses. So therefore you've got variances on both sides of that factor. That is, yeah, it's great that we have more revenues, but if we use the community centers more, then there's going to be more costs. If we use the arenas more, there's more costs, that type of thing. So there is, as you said, a lot of dynamics, and I could waste a lot of your time going through all of them,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of ups and downs in the various areas.
Okay, Councillor Bosenworth?
So there is some luck in this. You know, interest rates were up and we didn't plan them to be that high, and it's a good thing they were because it helped to cover our snow expenditures. Just trying to get a sense of how much risk do we actually have, and there's a fair amount of risk. And a lot of it's weather related.
This year.
This year, yeah.
This is the interesting question.
We need to be ready for highly variable weather.
It would be a question, I'm not sure quite to whom, but is that something that we could track on its own? Is just the impacts on our year-over-year budget from weather-related events, just. Okay. Not getting a lot. It seems to be pulling out that there's impacts on our budget that are directly related to the changing weather conditions.
I would qualify, Chair, that, I mean, we can track anything. There's
Mhm.
limitations with our current system.
Okay.
But we can certainly set things up to track them go forward. I guess we'd have to just create parameters and definitions around what is you know, if you're talking about extraordinary weather events versus regular weather events, right? And, you know, we had the situation, one of the variances this year was where we had the dam burst and the road washout. And so where do we characterize those things? But I think we could create something that gives you some sense of what are those extraordinary costs versus what are those things that we could probably reasonably anticipate. And just follow up to Councillor Bosenworth's question. Staff are very conservative on their revenue forecasts and budgets when they set them up. And I think that's, you know, because of the unpredictability around that, there's always a sense to, if we're going to be wrong, we'd rather be wrong to the low side than to the high side. And in this year, we were just very fortunate that they were, we did have some windfalls with respect to tax sale, with respect to bylaw whatever fines and those types of things that we're able to offset. But I would say, fortunate is the optimum word there. I don't know that we would necessarily plan or count on those as being our savior every year going forward. So I think we continue to look at the way we budget, look at our results from the past, try to, use the crystal ball as best we can, but be prudent. I think that's really the main principle we use is prudence when we're creating our annual budgets.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards and then Mayor Kelly.
Yes, further to the 183,000 that we want to track. Do we ever track what it would cost us to hire people to run these programs, like the pickleball, like the potluck dinners, like everything else like that? Is there any way we can track that to say, hey, we're spending 183,000, but we've also saved 500,000 on salaries or whatever it is? And I'd like to see that if we're going to start going into everything, because I go to a lot of these things and there's a lot of organizing hours go into them that we don't recognize. How could we recognize that is my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Donaldson.
Through you, Chair. I don't know that we'd have a good baseline to create an opportunity cost metric that we could track against whatever we've waived in fees. I think it would, it would just be a proxy that would just be based on assumptions on assumptions. So I don't know that we would have an accurate sense that would give you any sort of comfort or confidence that we would know exactly what running a potluck dinner would cost if we hired people to do it or catered it.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Maybe what we could do is ask the groups who are using these how many hours it took them to organize it and put a dollar value on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mayor Kelly.
Thank you, and through you, this is terrific information. There is a lot in your 8-page, I think it is, summary, but it's useful, it's helpful. It does take you through the high notes of where things were missed up or benefited, down. And I think that information is terrific. My view on this is the success we have has, the plan evolves over time. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Director Donaldson said this, that, last year's results will inform this year's plan. And that's about the best we can make it work. Where we really need to focus and where we're obviously getting a benefit is from execution. Once the plan's done, it gets turned over to all the different departments, and it's the execution that's creating this community and coming in tight to a little bit above, a little bit below budget. I think that's where the real win is for us. And as far as the volunteer efforts, I don't know what I would do with the information if I knew it cost $500,000 to put on a deep fried pickleball dinner. But I do know that this community depends on huge volunteer effort. We've had 2 delegations from 2 different groups that run exclusively on, I don't think there's a paid employee. I'll be surprised if there's a paid employee. I suspect there was maybe 1 in each. But, the best thing we can do is encourage that kind of participation from community members, deputize everyone in this township to step up and take the lead and help to build a community. Encourage it, reward it, focus on it, give it some, heartfelt thanks from council on behalf of the township. We could never replace, we could never groom trails, we could never host turkey dinners at the Milford Bay Community Center. It's just, that is going to continue to need a lot of support from a lot of different people in organizations throughout this community that are here to help us build the community.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
I just want to, thank you, Chair, and through you, just want to make it perfectly clear. I'm not asking for this information to cut things out. I'm asking for this information so we understand where the value we're getting, and possibly one of the words I'll pick up from Mayor Kelly, reward. I'd love to be able to reward 2 of the leaders, ladies in Milford Bay somehow through this council for the work they're doing and breathing life. There's no mechanism to do that. So that's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burry.
Thank you. And through you, I'll point out that in the mid 2000s, 2004, 5, 6, council used to have staff or appreciation. There a little get together at the community center and some plaques the mayor gave out. You know, I am the proud recipient of a few of them, and I think that's something that we dropped in COVID, and clearly something that we could get back on and definitely use to reward. We have so many people in this township that give and give and give without much thanks. And I think there's an awful lot of consensus around the table that we could do a little more to say thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you very much for a great and comprehensive review. Oh, thank you.
Unclear. Is there any staff direction? Guiding requests? Did we go back to track?
Okay, CAO Pink, sorry, just before we get onto your report, has a couple of questions for clarification.
Sorry, thank you, through you. Just looking for direction from committee if Councillor Roberts, Councillor Burry did raise certain requests, but I'm not sure if there's been consensus, or certainly I can look to the clerk if we can craft a resolution, if there's a desire to do so, for staff to come back with a report either on, I believe the consensus or the suggestion was perhaps of some volunteer appreciation type event, or further details. I don't know if it's again in a separate staff report on the fees that are waived, or perhaps that's just in future quarterly financial reports. Again, I'm not sure again if there was direction from committee or a consensus for staff to come back with any further information.
Okay, thank you. So under the, I think everything is falling under the banner of the value of volunteers and how we would, and the volunteer community, the support that we have in here. So I think Mayor Kelly, you had a comment?
Well, thank you. And through you, I think Councillor Burry raises a really good point. We're dropping the ball by not making a public declaration of thanks and rewarding people for their efforts. So I would love to see a staff report come back on how we would organize that, and particularly how would those recipients be identified and selected. We can't reward everybody, but how do we kind of make a case to, and you know, I would like to know sort of how do you kind of level set somebody who's volunteering to groom a snow trail versus somebody who's putting on a dinner at Milford Bay. Those kinds of things need to be recognized and rewarded. Can't, like I said, do everybody. So I'd love to see some idea of how you walk through and identify those recipients that are most deserving.
Okay, thank you. And so just, I will get to you in a second. If it was under the, I think our clerk is currently writing up a resolution for us, but under the banner of the value of volunteers, and it could incorporate some of the metrics that Councillor Roberts was asking for, to put a value on it. Because this is what Councillor Edwards is also getting to, I think, which is if we had to hire a programming specialist, which was never a recommendation in the Parks and Rec master plan, there is a huge value, there's a cost to that person and that service of actual programming. So is that captured somehow in this? So committee, okay, so I see that I'm going to have two questions. I see Councillor Zavitz and Councillor Nishikawa. So I'm going to go to Councillor Zavitz first, then Councillor Nishikawa, and then we'll come back to see what this resolution could read.
Thank you, and through you, I certainly am in full favor of community service recognition, and I certainly agree with my peers. I would certainly support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Respectfully, making it too complicated. The way that it ran before was that essentially the committee or the group that you're volunteering with, they would bring your name forward. The township wouldn't go seeking out or looking for who those people would be generally. I mean, there was always, but there's more involvement from the groups and more or less the suggestions from the community who should, it would be a very, very difficult thing for our township to determine who is deserving. in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. CAO Pink.
Thank you. Just for clarity, certainly not looking for direction or consensus on what to do. I'm just looking, was there a desire for staff to come back with a report on potential options for committee to consider? In fairness, I think it would be a challenge to put a value on the volunteers. Just to caution there, but we can certainly put our heads together on potential options for councils to recognize the volunteers in our community.
Thank you. Just one moment, Council. Councillor Edwards, I do have a resolution that's drafted, so I'll listen. Please ask your question or make your comment, and then I'll read the resolution.
What I would like to know is if we had an event planner, figure the salary of that out, take the amount of hours that are in, if the pickleball's in for 4 hours, you put that wage for 4 hours into that. If it's euchre tournaments or anything else like that, take the actual hours the halls are rented, put a dollar value on a person if you had them in there, and it could come pretty close to what it would cost us. And I think it would be well over 183,000, would it not?
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I do have a resolution. I will read this now. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to committee with options regarding a volunteer appreciation event program and how volunteers could be selected. Okay. See a nodding of head. I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. I think. Moving on now to item 9A, and there is a resolution to be read.
Good morning, committee, through you, Chair. The report before you this morning, and it details a change, an actual new bylaw that our department is looking for. This bylaw, simply put, is a bylaw to authorize some of the fees that we are currently already charging today. It also puts some description around what those fees are. Through a review through our solicitor, as a part of our constant continuous improvement through our departments, this was highlighted. So this is basically a tidying up document, but I now stand for questions.
Okay, thank you. So committee, I do have a resolution, but I will be asking at this point for questions for our fire chief. Okay, seeing none. Moved by Councillor Edwards, seconded by Councillor Kent. Be it resolved that the fire department user fees bylaw as attached to Appendix 1 to report ES-2025-002 be approved, and that the final bylaw be forwarded to council for final approval. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item, 9B. And this is for information only.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee. Report before you today is just an overview of the Beaumaris and Windermere Wharf projects. Committee is aware that both the replacement of these docks were included in the 2025 capital budget. But through those budget discussions, we also discussed a few other items as part of those projects that we'd like to consider throughout the year, much more than just replacing the docks themselves like for like. And that includes reviewing the current bylaw, discussing with the current stakeholders in those areas about maybe what's working, what's not working. Use this as an opportunity to review the system as a whole and make improvements of where is needed. Further, we also talked about the wharf manager agreements, potential for other systems, more automatic systems. So we'd certainly like to evaluate those a little bit more in depth. So before you today is just a general project timeline associated with those two projects that staff envision over the next year. And we stand for any questions to help assist with those. Again, similar to the parks development plans last month, just part of improving that communication process, making sure we're all on the same page of how we're going to engage with the community with these, et cetera, and how people can follow along.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, and through you. I just have one quick question, which is, I assume you're going to consider some alternative materials for the docking, like Foots Bay, not the public wharf, but their new docks for the extended docking there. They did in some great composite material that is indestructible. Clearly, it would extend the life of our docking in these kind of public locations. That's all. I assume that was my only question.
Okay.
Yes, through the tender process, we can certainly consider aspects such as that for sure. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bosemore.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Moore, are we going to give some consideration to our policy for renting slips to individuals and therefore, taking up slips on our public docks?
Yes, that's correct. Certainly an opportunity to review those details. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Many meetings ago, my colleague on the right here, Councillor Edwards, brought up the idea of setting up a metering station for so they wouldn't have to have an attendant there all the time. Will this be considered through this process?
Through you, Chair, yes. Yes, that's the goal, is to evaluate those types of options and see if there's solutions out there that would benefit us further. But that certainly involves some engagement with the stakeholders and reviewing those options themselves. And we'll certainly take that opportunity throughout this project. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
I have a couple of questions in that. First of all, the Beaumaris dock, you've got 300,000, the Windermere dock, 475. What is the length of those docks? It seems that Windermere has an awful lot more dockage, and yet it doesn't jive, but I didn't know what it was. That's the first question.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, through you, Chair. The docks at Windermere, there's a lot more of them. So that's the reasoning for the price difference. I don't know the specific lengths off the top of my head. I could certainly get that information. We have it, but the gist of it is Windermere just certainly has a lot more docking that needs to be replaced.
No, I realize that. I'm looking at the cost of Beaumaris, like the length, like per foot. And that I thought there was so much more in Windermere that the one in Beaumaris would be a little less. That's the one thing. And the second thing, I think with our fees, and that with the yearly rental is, in my opinion, way too low. If you look at what, say, parkers are charging, you're paying almost $2,000, and you can go to Windermere for $800. Doesn't seem fair. And that we're and not competing against other. I think we should, with our public docks, only have a monthly fee. We would get more that way and not do year round, but it's just in that. So if you would consider that in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is this the type of information you will be seeking from the stakeholders?
Yes, absolutely. Through you, Chair. Yes, we'll certainly be reviewing the fees associated as well. As you can see, part 4 that we expect to be taking place in the fall would align with when we review the annual fees bylaw. So that would be the opportunity where we could make those changes for sure.
And just for a clarification on process, you will be coming back to this body. This is just for information to introduce us to how you see these projects involved.
Certainly, yes. Yes, okay. Through you, Chair, there will be multiple touch points back with this body as we go through those phases, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, Councillor Nishikawa.
Just one more quick question. As it relates to the Windermere docks, I look at the picture and it just brings back my summer memories of trying to park there. Are you going to look at potentially restructuring them in the format to be more efficient?
Through you, Chair, yes, absolutely. Yeah, we've certainly had lots of those discussions with the area stakeholders, so we're looking forward to that opportunity, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you. Through you to, I'm going to say the director. This is just because I don't know when I get an opportunity to ask this, but are we only looking at doing steel docks moving forward or floating docks moving forward? I have a bigger concern from sustainability and things. So that's why I just wanted to have an understanding of what our township does.
Okay. Director Colucci.
Sure, and through you, Madam Chair. So the Beaumaris dock is actually a fixed dock, so that could explain the difference in cost because we have footings to do there, so that would elevate the cost. Where the Windermere docks are floating docks, so typically they're less per square meter than a fixed dock. And during the tender process and this engagement process, we will be looking at other opportunities. So if there is different materials or different type of floating docks, like steel floating docks or plastic floating docks, we'll look at all those things as in cost base. But I think the cost estimates are based on what's there now. So we got estimates for replacing what's there, but during the process we can look at alternatives and look at better efficiencies as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, and I appreciate that information, but I would also someday, one day, whenever we're looking at what our assets are and those types of things, I would like to have a better understanding or discussion about what we are replacing and how we're doing those types of things moving forward. That it actually aligns with what our environmental concerns are as well, and all of that other long-term stuff. And I just will say that it's been many, many years since I think we've heard that kind of conversation around this table with councillors. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. And I do appreciate this approach. It's like a proactive approach to help us understand how these projects are unfolding. And just looking at your timeline, you've got it very nicely laid out as to when each group and stakeholder group will be contacted or engaged with, including us. So thank you. I think we will move on to the next one, which is the Windermere Village Playground. Mr. Moore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This report, as committee is aware, was requested by General Finance Committee last month for us to return on. Committee is well aware there's a community group in Windermere that made a proposal last spring regarding a partnership to install a new playground at the Windermere Village Hall property. They proposed a kind of a 50-50 funding split. At that time, committee directed staff to include the funds in the 2025 budget. As committee is aware, going through that budget process, we discussed the proposal a little bit at that time and determined that we would wait to the completion of the Parks and Trails Standards Manual and the level of service study to help guide us on these future infrastructure projects. It was made clear at that time that if it is something that council ultimately ends up deciding to proceed with, that the funds could be withdrawn from the Parkland Reserve so that the funding aspect of it wouldn't hold up the project by any means. In reviewing, now that we have completed the Parks and Trails Standards Manual, in reviewing the proposal, the Windermere Village Hall property itself is identified as a parkette in that manual. And the report includes the definition of what a parkette is. But ultimately, it does include that a parkette may include a small playground and is a gathering space for the community. Further, there is a table within the Parks and Trails Standards Manual that does identify areas of opportunities, and this property was identified as one of those areas. So in reviewing the proposal, staff certainly are supportive of it and would recommend proceeding with that partnership. Within the report itself, we've laid out how that partnership would work. And it is nice that we do have that Parks and Trail Standards manual now that identifies that process. So you'll see within the report, it helps outline and is very clear on the roles and responsibilities and how staff plan to work with the fundraising committee and that community group, and we're really excited to do so. If there's any questions regarding that, staff are happy to help. I think the one important note is to make is just the funding component of it. So they are proposing a goal of 150,000. So they would like to raise half of those funds. And staff envision that as we proceed through this project, as we come back to this body to determine those final playground plans and designs, we would have a better understanding of what the total costs are going to be, how much the community group has raised at that point. And there'll certainly be opportunities then for us to further consider those amounts. Perhaps it's done in phases or something, but I don't want to try to jump too far ahead. I think we need to let the process play out and we can go from there. So Chair, I'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Thank you. And I do have a resolution, so this is a chance for questions for Mr. Moore. Question, Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you, and through you to Corey. Listen, I'm totally in support of this, especially given the way this thing is looking to be constructed, where the community and the township work together on the funding piece. I would ask a question of Corey. What kind of an arrangement do we as the township look for from the volunteers? I might also add that in my research pre to this meeting, this was a year ago, this meeting, that Ms. Lane came forward with the idea. So, you know, we've been looking at this for the year, and I think things take its time. And I guess I'm asking that question here and now. What do we look for from the volunteers in terms of I don't know, an agreement, in this relationship as they come up with their 50% of whatever that X final number is? Thank you.
Okay, is that the question? Okay.
Yes, through you, Chair. We've certainly we've had many discussions with the community group to ensure that they understand the roles and responsibilities. Obviously, being on township property, the township would take the lead on the project, handle kind of the admin side of the project, I would say, where we would certainly rely on that committee or that community group to take charge of the fundraising side of that project. So we've worked with our Treasury Department as to how we can help support that community group through that process, collection of the funds, issuing of receipts in that regard. But we've also discussed how we will improve those communications or include that community group throughout the project at the various touch points as they are, invested in that community, understand the needs and wants of members of that community. So it's certainly important that we get their input throughout it on the designs, reviewing the proposals, reviewing the community input on that side. So staff don't envision a formalized agreement. Don't feel that's maybe necessary for this project in general, but certainly a partnership that we'd love to undertake.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, committee? Councillor Edwards, question?
Yes, to Corey. I was talking with Karen Lane, and they have the Windermere Gazette that they send out. They can send out so that it gets everybody in the community. Is there a way we could have, say, a Zoom meeting that people put their input into it so that we could get this moving a little faster?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, through you, Chair. We certainly want to get moving quick on it. one of the appendices of the report is that project timeline, and it is fairly aggressive. We would love to have that project installed in 2025. So as mentioned in the report, although final approval wouldn't come back to council for ratification until April, staff would begin working on that communication aspect of it. And we're already well prepared on that and kind of ready to start. So we can certainly, I think, entertain different opportunities for community input. Maybe a Zoom meeting should be considered, but I'd love to discuss that more with that committee and Ms. Lang herself. And we have regular occurring meetings scheduled with them. So to always have those touch points. So, certainly appreciated. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I will read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Bosenworth. Be it resolved that committee approve the Windermere Village Playground proposal as per details outlined in staff report OS-2025-05, and that staff be directed to encumber 75,000 from the Parkland Dedication Reserve Fund with the balance to be funded by community donors and create project 25141 Windermere Village Playground in the amount of $150,000. So are there any comments? Councillor Roberts, Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, just to answer one of the questions, why has it taken a year from the time that the committee came here asking for the park? We were following process. We had something called the service level review that was in front of us, and we all agreed that we would best to postpone improve change in the service level in a particular area until after that service level review. From that, we talked about what we were specifically going to get out of the service level review that would influence this park, and we found that the park design manual was going to be key and instrumental. That's the part. The other big piece of it was the dollars. And so in our 2025 budget, we said that if we go forward with this, we can pull the money out of the park and recreation trails. In the councillors of Ward B have been close working with the committee, specific Carrying Lang. And I got to thank Mr. Moore. Without his leadership and guidance and foresight, and we wouldn't be where we are today without that. And I thank you, Corey. And he at the meeting with Ms. Lang, he really answered all the questions that Ms. Lang had, and so it's terrific. We have a timeline. We know it's aggressive, but we were talking 2026. Before a couple of months ago. Now we're talking the fall of 2025. So we've really stepped up. Thank you.
Okay. Are there, sorry, Councillor McIntyre.
I just want to say I'm really excited about this, that it's moving forward in a really good way. It's such a happy story. It's a good feeling story, and we're getting her done. And as Councillor Roberts said, by October of 2025, and that is so exciting. Because my biggest concern when this first came up was that the kids that they were building the park for were going to be going to university. So good job, well done, and I'm pretty excited about this. I can throw in a nastier comment here and just say, for everyone's information, Walker's Point Community Center still doesn't have stoves.
Okay.
So good job. Well done. I'm really excited about this. No kidding.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on the Windermere Village Park? Before I read the resolution, I would like to echo the comments that Councillor Roberts has just shared, that this has been a process and perhaps a bit of pride in the sense that we really did wait for that Parks and Trail Standards manual and instead of trying to shove something through, we really were waiting to make sure that all things were aligned. And I think there's a real pride in that. And I think this project is just a great great model for things going forward. So I do want to thank you for the leadership that you've shown and the diplomacy, quite frankly, because you are our representative with the broader community on so many different fronts. And certainly the experience thus far has been very positive. So thank you. I have read the resolution. I, at this point, will call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, committee, it is 10:15. I would like to recommend a 15-minute break. We will come back at 10:30 to do the next item on the agenda. Thank you.
Okay.
Come on, come on, get another 15 minutes. It'll be fine.
children and, no kidding. And she still managed to find a doctor who said, yes, I agree, this is wrong, and I will see it through and make sure he.
For this report,
It's
or are you just thinking that last one I asked?
And that's just such a mess out in the world right now.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I can get the hours, I can get the number.
Yeah.
No. Multiple programs, yeah.
But where are the social skills to say, oh my gosh, I can understand you're really upset, you can't work. And will you ever work as a trucker? Will your employer keep your job open while you fight? Guys getting upset.
Oh, yeah.
It's frustrated, but let's just get rid of him because he's frustrated.
No.
Yeah, and you just, when I eventually did this one.
Yeah, the reality is very unique.
Yeah.
Facilities that we rate in so I feel like we have a model right on the Sunrec master plan that speaks directly to how we have it set up now. It relies on community volunteers, partnerships. And so when we did that policy about the fees, that was the whole purpose behind it. We're not going to be able to do this with our resources. We need the community. This is how we do it. The numbers are showing that the usage is going in, right? Yes.
Okay, thank you and welcome back. I will now ask Mr. Moore to take us through the next item.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the next report is regarding the Windermere and Allswater Community Center kitchens. As committee is aware, the upgrades to those facility kitchens were included in the 2025 capital budget at a price of $175,000 each. That number was based on the cost associated with the Walker's Point Community Center kitchen upgrade that we've recently completed or are in the process of completing. Sorry, we're very close. We're very close. I know, we're getting there. As committee's aware, with our community centers a couple years ago, our kitchens, or many of our kitchens, were not in compliant with fire code regulations. At that time, to become compliant, the decision was made to remove those stoves from those facilities and ultimately consider replacing or upgrading those kitchens on a case-by-case basis as usage warranted. First up was the Walker's Point Community Center kitchen, which was included in the 2023 capital budget. So as we began to dive into these two projects upon the approval of the 2025 budget, staff worked with CC Tatham to begin looking at these facilities to draft the designs associated with those commercial kitchens. It quickly became apparent that these facilities, given their age and the way they were built, it was going to become even more expensive to upgrade these facilities. Both those facilities would require additional servicing to the facilities to power these new upgrades, as well as renovations to the facilities to support the equipment. In particular, the makeup air units that lie in the attic space or on the roof. So with that, we took the opportunity with CC Tatham to start right from the beginning again, circle back, review all the options available to us, and with that, we worked with Chief Morrell and our CBO Nick Snyder. Lots of discussions on possible alternative solutions, recognizing that the use of these two facilities in particular, much more of a smaller scale, much more comparable to a residential style usage, The facilities themselves are a lot smaller than Walker's Point Community Center, for example, can't hold as many people. And with that, we came to a solution that everyone was agreeable to. An alternative solution that is certainly more cost efficient, but also still meets the requirements of a suppression system, an automatic suppression system, should any instances occur that they would need to activate. That said, it would be based on a few specific parameters, and those parameters are included within the staff report. But basically, they identify understanding that if there are ever requests for commercial type usage of a kitchen, that we recommend those users go to those facilities that have those available infrastructure, having proper signage in place at these facilities, and perhaps on the rental agreements, ensuring that there's kind of a waiver sign off that they understand the purpose of those kitchen uses. With that, staff are recommending that we adjust those capital projects for the 2025 year, and that committee consider perhaps adding the Foots Bay Community Center as well, which is the last remaining community center that was currently scheduled to be updated in 2026. Given that we will have some savings from these two projects, it could be an opportunity to do that community center as well. And by doing all three at once with these new systems, it perhaps could have some small cost savings as well. So with that, Chair, staff are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I do have a resolution, but at this point I will ask if there's any questions for Mr. Moore. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, can you, Foots Bay, can you enlighten the committee on the usage of Foots Bay for last year?
Yes, through you, Chair. In preparation for today, I did gather the usage statistics for these three facilities. Foots Bay Community Center in 2024 had approximately 90 rentals for about 222 hours. About 50% of those rentals are for their regular karate offering that occurs at that facility. And if you'd like, I can share some of the data from Allswater and Windermere too. Would that be appreciative? Okay, Allswater, about 133 rentals in 2024, approximately just under 500 hours. Majority of those usages is they have a lot of programming, events, fitness programs, etc. going on in that facility. And Windermere had 129 rentals for 680 hours. And I would say about 50% of those rentals are the archive group that also utilize that hall. But those are some of the broad high level numbers, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. And so thank you for that information. That's great. For Foots Bay, is there a community group involved in the Foots Bay area that is really promoting the use of Foots Bay? Or you said there's about 100 hours that are used by the karate group. The other 100 hours are basically what's it what's it used for?
Okay, thank you.
So through you, Chair, that community center doesn't have a hall board currently. So I would say compared to other facilities, they don't have kind of maybe that body that's helping promote the use of the facility. I would say those other rentals tend to be smaller scale uses, birthday parties, etc. that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Zavitz, question?
Yes, thank you. And through you to Corey. While it's in your report a number of times referencing Walker's Point, to Councillor McIntyre's point, and I hate to bring this up, but I have to, because we're continually being asked about the stove in Walker's Point. Can you give us boots on the ground? Here's when this thing is going to be completed, because it has been, as you said, what, 2023 when we first started talking about it, and now it's 2025, and there's still no stove there. So could you please reflect on that? Thank you.
So I recognize that this isn't specific to this topic, but given it's now come up twice, perhaps
Yes, happy to give an update. I too have that frustration that it's taken longer than expected. Boots on the ground, we've had the final inspection. There's a few items that we just need to fix up. And we anticipate those to be completed fairly soon, at which time we can just get it re-inspected. So everything's in place there. If you were to walk into the facility, it looks like it's ready to go. But we just need to wait on that final approval to close the building permit. So we're very close, very close.
thank you. Are there any other questions before I read the resolution? Okay, seeing none. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that committee approve proceeding with the alternative kitchen model as outlined in report OPS-2025-006 for the Windermere and Ullswater Community Centre kitchens, and that the 2025 capital budget be amended as follows. Project 25137, Windermere kitchen upgrades be amended to $40,000 from $175,000, and project 25138, Ullswater Community Centre kitchen upgrades be amended to $40,000 from $175,000, and that the savings, $40,000, be used to create project 25139, Foots Bay Community Centre kitchen upgrades to be funded from the Building and Facilities Reserve Fund. So are there any questions or comments? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One question I failed to ask you when you were giving is that if we were to do Foots Bay, there was some sort of savings, or we could, how much would that be? Okay, if you can answer that.
Through you, Chair, it would be approximately the same as Windermere and Ullswater. So the 2026 capital budget had that same amount as $175,000 based on what we saw in Walker's Point. Given that facility, though, until you get the in-depth design, it's hard to determine if it has it may need some structural supports, etc. But so that would be the cost savings, similar to Ullswater and Windermere.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Okay, my comment is I'm very reluctant to support the $40,000 for Foots Bay, and I'd like to hear from the councillors in that area. It's historically has been underused. I was looking forward to some real roll up your sleeves discussions during the service level review on community centers and the service level that we are going to have. It does not seem that we'll be doing that very soon. So I think that we should withhold putting in money into this kitchen until we do the service level review, and that's my opinion. But I'd love to hear from my colleagues that are in that ward.
Okay, so I see two hands up, but I don't think either one of them are in that ward, but any of the ward councillors want to? Okay, so perhaps they want to hear from some of the others first, and then they may have comment. Okay, so Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I actually, I've always been in support of community centers, but I had thought that we were going to be starting to discuss the service level, asks and things like that. And this may have been one of those buildings, mostly because I thought it was also tied in with a discussion about fire halls. And, because there's a few of our centers that are associated with fire halls. And so I'm not quite sure that I could say that I would want to spend the money on that hall right now. But it's not that I don't understand, and it's been going on for years and years, honestly, where it's just gotten less and less and less use type thing. But I don't know how to leave it open if in case we find a reason to do the work.
since the initial was 175 for each of the halls, which is 350,000. Now we're down to 80,000, and putting Foots Bay in would only be another 40,000. That's 120,000. But I think we could at least get the quotes on it and see, and then we can decide on that one. But I would go ahead with the other ones, and I'm quite supportive of that. But like I say, I think we should at least get quotes on it.
Thank you, through you, and this may sound like a bit of a sacrilege, but I am far more interested in the well-being of the township and not a single ward and not a single community center. I'm more interested in what is the best level of service we can provide as a township to all of our constituents in a fair and equitable way, affordable, and to make sure that we're getting usage out of spaces. So to put one community center against another community center until we understand how it fits in for the entire township is something that I'm loath to comment on. And I may get a few emails, and that's fine. That's appropriate. But I think that we as a council need to start to focus on the township more than our small constituencies, and look at what's best for the township, because we have a township budget, not a ward A or B or C budget. We have a township fire department, we have township community centers, and we have township volunteers. So it would really be nice if we as a council could begin to focus on what's best for the township as a whole, before we get down into the rabbit warrens of one kitchen or another. And people will recognize that spending $1 that then gets ripped out a year or two later is the kinds of stuff that just infuriate me. And that's,
Okay, thank you.
I'll end with an up to make sure it's a question.
Well, that's okay, though. We're in comments now, so that's okay. Mayor Kelly and then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, and through you, I'm sort of a little confused because I think we're only being asked to approve Ullswater and Windermere as project plans, if I'm not mistaken. The project in Foots Bay was referenced because it was dealt with in the last budget, where we moved it ahead, I believe, from 27 to 26, but I don't think it's an approved, I don't think there's any approvals. And we're proposing to deck savings into a fund that if, as and when we approve something for Foots Bay, would be used to pay for the Foots Bay project. But we're not, to my knowledge, I mean, I just tried to have a real quick reread of what I understood, and it confirms that the ask is Ullswater and what's the other one? Windermere, not Foots Bay. And while we're simply doing is referencing that to the extent we're going to see a $40,000 saving, that it be moved over to a project that frankly is not slated for discussion and approval until next year, I think.
I think we should have clarification from staff on the resolution. I think there is a misunderstanding the way it's being read.
Yes.
Is that, would this be approving the installation of a stove into Foots Bay for this year?
Yes, the way the resolution is drafted is just that, is it would move would move Foots Bay up to 2025 from 2026. And the reasoning behind that is just giving committee the opportunity to discuss it further, recognizing that the cost of those projects has now changed since the budget discussions. So it's just an opportunity for committee to rediscuss that opportunity. Should committee wish to keep it in 2026, staff can certainly do that as well too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I apologize.
I was
Councillor,
confused with
could I ask, because you've already had a chance to speak as well. Councillor Kent? Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. And as the Ward C member closest to this, I would say that just to put this in perspective, I've never in the 3 years that I've been doing this now received one call, question, or request related to the Foots Bay Community Center. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be some work done there. I guess my question is, and I remember when when I called Peter and said, when he was putting out, sorry, Peter, Mayor Kelly, when Mayor Kelly put out the hall board assignments, and I'm like, don't you need me on a Footsbay hall board or something? And it didn't appear as if it was active. And I guess I'd have to go back and find out what the history is of this hall board to understand, why is there no hall board? Is there not a community that's active there? The decision to eliminate it, or, not fund it because you think you're going to eliminate it, is a decision that requires, from my perspective, would require a little history. I don't know what went on there, and I don't know how it's used. And I've never been there because no one's ever asked me about it. And that's probably my fault. I should have spent some time out there, but it doesn't seem to be an issue. I would like to see, maybe have a little history there before we made a decision to go one way or another, and find out whether we should be doing something to help grow it, because I know, Glenn has taken a very active approach in building the people on the hall board in Bala, and I think we should be doing the same things, if that's the case, before we make a decision that it's a goodbye. So anyway, I don't know if somebody can give me a little history.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing from a few members, and Councillor Roberts, I will have, but I've now heard it from a few members, that perhaps delaying a decision on this stove until we have further information or understanding on the Footsbay Community Center might be helpful. So Councillor Roberts, does that?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's exactly what I was going to say. Can we separate a resolution, separated into two resolutions?
Okay, thank you. CAO Pink? Oh.
Just have to delete the last part.
The team here is working on how we're going to do this. Councillor Edwards,
Yes, and I think if you remember what I said, was that we should at least get a quotation for it. That's all I said. We don't have to go ahead with it, but if we're doing the other two halls, it would be wise to get a quotation on it. And even if we then turn it down at a later date. Thank you.
Okay, so I do have a resolution that I will read that so let me read this resolution, and it's about removing the last paragraph. Point of order? Yes. Yes. Councilor Chicago.
Thank you. I'm just not clear, because the resolution was already read. Do we not have to respond to that resolution in some form?
Director Peroshi?
Thank you. So the resolution that's in front of the chair is to amend that first resolution. So the first resolution's on the floor. This one's to amend that first one. And then if that passes, then there would be the question of all in favor of the main motion as amended, which would be passing the main motion with the amendment.
Thank you for the question and clarification. So let me read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to strike out the last paragraph. Would you like me to reread, or does everybody remember what the original resolution? I can read the last paragraph. And that with the savings, $40,000 be used to create project 25139, Footsbay Community Center kitchen upgrades to be funded from the Building and Facilities Reserve Fund. So essentially, we would be removing the discussion on Footsbay for right now. I think it would seem that staff has heard a lot of the conversation. And so by removing that, it would advance the two kitchens for Windermere and Allswater. So they would be proceeding with that. And just clarifying, thank you very much, that Footsbay remains in the 2026 budget. So it's still in there. It's not that it's not, it's just giving us some further time to understand that particular facility. Councillor Edwards.
Problem I have with that is I had asked about a quotation, because if you're doing the three halls, it might be a little bit of a savings at this point. We don't have to go ahead, but at least I'd like to know what it would cost. I don't know if anybody else thinks that, but I mean, it might be 30,000 if we do it now. That's all I was asking, but by striking that out, then you're not going to get a quotation and we're not going to know.
That's useful.
Anybody else have any comments on?
It's, I'm stumbling here for a moment. Mr. Moore, would you still be getting a quote?
Yes, through
in
you,
these?
yes, through you,
Okay.
Chair, we'd follow the procurement bylaw. Typically for those amounts, though, staff would have the authority to approve those amounts for those tenders. I can say I don't think the price is going to be too much cheaper by doing a third versus two. I don't think it would be that much of an impact on it overall, but.
Thank you. Mayor Kelly, I saw that you had your hand up.
I think perhaps, thank you, and through you, I think Mr. Moore may have just answered my question. I'm still stumped. I don't, the plan that, the project number, which you read, is that an approved project that we've already approved, that the council has signed off on, or is it something that we won't see anyhow because it falls within the discretion of staff? Because I'm still surprised that we're considering doing that. You know, I reread the report, says we could decide to do it, but doesn't say that it's going to be on the agenda. I'm just caught off guard. I did not think this was part of today's exercise. I thought it was focused on Windermere and Ullswater. I did not think it was focused at all on Foots Bay. I thought it was simply an acknowledgement in the plan. But if it doesn't need our authority, if it doesn't need our approval, then I understand why we haven't been asked to review the project plan for Foots Bay.
Okay, CAO Pink.
Thank you. I'll try to help clarify my understanding, but Mr. Moore, Mr. Donaldson, Mr. Clucci, please feel free to correct. So the projects, Mr. Moore noted, are included in the 2025 budget. Due to, even though they're significantly under budget, because there's a material scope or material change in the scope of the project, there's a different ventilation design, different kitchen that would be installed in those. They would not be NFP 96 compliant. Staff felt under the delegation of authority, it's appropriate to advise committee and council of that change. So hence, we're bringing that information to you. It seems committee's supportive of the changes to the kitchens in both Ullswater and Windermere. As Mr. Moore noted, we did discuss that at staff. We didn't feel there would be significant economies of scale to do 3 versus 2. However, seeing as Foots Bay was in the 26 budget, and just mainly for some efficiencies, we could do all 3 at once because the total cumulative cost is expected to come in less than just one of the singular projects. We thought we might put an end to the kitchen saga once and for all, and perhaps do this in 2025. Certainly appreciate that council may wish to reconsider the Foots Bay Community Center kitchen. That's the amended resolution before you, is to take that out. Again, as I think Chair Marzan correctly noted, that project would still be in the 26 budget. That could be considered through the 26 process. So again, staff could be directed to bring back more specific quotes if that's Councillor Edwards' request. However, again, I think Mr. Moore is of the opinion that likely there's not really going to be that many benefits of economies of scale to do the 3. So I hope that helps clarify the where we are.
Would you like a supplemental?
Just quickly, thank you. And yes, that does help. Thank you very much through you. It does help me considerably. And I think since asset manage update might be the next one on the list, I think that's where we need to focus our energies before we decide to put any more capital into our overall infrastructure until we understand what that the asset management guideline is going to inform us to do with some of the infrastructure. So if that's sufficiently confusing, I'll leave it there.
Okay, I think just for the clarity, I now have read a second resolution, and that is to remove that last paragraph that talks to Foots Bay. That doesn't mean we're not ever going to contemplate Foots Bay. It's already in the next year's budget for consideration. It's simply removing this so that staff can move forward on Windermere and Ullswater with the installation of these new kitchen setups. Is that a good summary here?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I have read this question. I will read it one more time. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Edwards. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to strike out the last paragraph. So, okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you. And now, I forget how I always have to say this. I have read the main motion. All in favor of the main motion as amended? Thank you. And all those opposed? Okay, that does carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore, I appreciate your time on those. Moving on to the next item, which is the asset levels of service study, which also has a resolution. So we will hear the report, ask questions, read a resolution, and then have discussion. Welcome, Mr. Colucci, Director Colucci.
I got an upgrade to counselor. That's good. Well, good morning, Chairman Zane and committee. The report before you provides a status update of the asset levels of service project. Ontario Regulation 588-17 requires all municipalities to complete asset levels of service by July 1st, 2025. The township retained a consultant, GHD Limited, who has been working with municipal staff to prepare the asset levels of service framework since April 2024. Phase 1 of the study has been completed. This phase includes the gathering of background information from completed studies, budgets, capital plans, and collecting information from peer organizations through interviews and surveys. Phase 2 of the study is underway. This phase includes community engagement, as well as workshops and surveys with subject matter experts within the municipality to develop a levels of service framework. The results of the community engagement are summarized in appendices 1 to 4. 19 residents attended the public open house. 450 responses were received on the DOT survey conducted at the Bala Cranberry Festival, and 184 online and paper responses were received to the survey posted on the Engage page and at municipal buildings. The engagement responses favored additional investment in 2 service areas: fire and local health services, and recreation and sports facilities, with 287 and 185 responses respectively. Transportation was next with 103 responses. Most responders were in favor of increasing taxes to maintain or enhance level of service. There were a wide range of responses to the open-ended questions about roads, community centers, public beach access, fire halls, and administration building. And there were many comments about putting the kitchens back in the community centers and also, keeping our arenas open. GHD is currently finalizing the levels of service framework and expects to report the results to a future committee meeting. Once presented, staff will be seeking public input on the proposed asset levels of service prior to finalizing the report for presentation at committee and then council. Staff are also seeking direction to finalize the next steps for both the arena feasibility and fire station location studies, with the aim to inform on recommended approaches to assist council in reaching final decisions on these projects. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee, I do have a resolution, so this is a chance for questions. Then the resolution, as we've all seen in the package, is specific to the arena feasibility and fire station location studies to have those come back. So at this point, I would suggest let's focus on any questions we have on our level of service studies. Councillor Zavitz.
Thank you. And through you to Nick, great update here. I find though that of course there's just enough information to hurt ourselves. I think we're looking for that, I guess that next level. I look in your recommendation, of course, the resolution. You're looking for us to, I suppose, recommend approaches that might assist us in our further deliberation down the road those few months from now. Can I ask you about the level of completeness? Especially when from your perspective, I hate to say you're relatively new, but you've been with us a great amount of time now. Can you sort of express to us what your feeling is on what you're seeing of our assets from a new guy, last guy in? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair. So, I guess if you're looking at the condition of our assets, so, the township has done a lot of asset condition assessments, and we're in the process of actually retaining a consultant to do the building condition assessments for all of our buildings that haven't been completed already. But, when you look at our asset management plan, our assets range, from poor to good, right? So, in roads, we have some roads that are fair, we have some roads that are good. So there's very assets. So it's very similar to other municipalities in Ontario where, in some situations, roads and bridges weren't cared for because the amount of capital expenditure wasn't enough. And, if you look at our road needs study, it recommends a certain level of expenditure to maintain our pavement condition index. And, we're currently spending less than that amount. So, naturally our pavement conditions will decrease over time. So, the goal would be, for council to approve, additional expenditures. As far as levels of service for the assets, when we're looking at level of service, there's, 3 parts to that level of service. So we have the customer expectations for levels of service, we have technical levels of service, and then we look at what we're actually doing at this currently at this time. So, in some cases, there will be a difference to what our current level is and what the expectation will be both from customers. So that's where, when we do the survey, that's what we're trying to get from the residents is what levels of service they are expecting from all of our different asset classes. So, I think, generally, our municipality is very similar to many municipalities in Ontario, and that's why Ontario did pass this legislation for all municipalities to develop asset management plans and also levels of service. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks. Thank you. I think this was one we're all trying to get our head around, so thank you. Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, and through you, it's my basic question. I usually ask at budget, but ultimately, I've wanted to move roads to a higher level, getting one more road done a year or one more little project, those types of things. But I also had, I think, challenges over probably the last 5 years have been actually not knowing how we're building our roads today. And what that service level is, because we have made some changes in what something has been in the past and what we're providing now. So I'm just not sure when and how we have those kind of conversations. And again, it's more understanding what we're getting, not just saying we're doing the road, but okay, what grade of or what level of service, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. So don't know where I'm going to go with this. I just don't know how to have this conversation, but I've always wanted to focus more on the roads because quite honestly, for most of our residents, that's about all we provide.
So Director Clucci, is the question kind of clear? How do we have these types of conversations? It's how a road is being built, and also how do we prioritize the entire package here?
Right. So for you, Madam Chair, so I'll try to respond to that. So basically, in our levels of service for roads, we do have, we look at the levels of service not only overall for the road network, but also for each class of roads. So for instance, we have hard paved roads, we have lower class bituminous roads, so that would be like the double surface treatment, and then we have gravel roads. So we are looking at that level of service for each of those road types. And as far as the differentiation for when we do capital projects, that's really set in our road needs study. So our road needs study determines, okay, if you have a road that has X amount of traffic, then this is the type of road it should be. So, hard pavement or double surface treatment. So I know last summer there were a couple of roads that we put surface treatment on, and that is still considered to be pavement, but it's called, low class bituminous instead of high class bituminous. So, when you have asphalt placement, it's called high class. So, the level of service on that road would be the same. It's still going to be a paved road. And the type of pavement is determined by the traffic volume. So as we update traffic volumes and measure, and we have increased traffic volumes from more housing being built, then that could change how we do it. So, a good time to talk about that is when we bring that road needs study next time. And then it's going to say, all the traffic volumes in there. And, we're going to set levels between when it should be high class, when it should be low class. And that could be a time where we could actually change that level, which could change the overall capital expenditure, because now we're changing the amount of money, or the amount of money we have to spend on the road if we're changing it from low class to high class.
Councillor Nishikawa.
Sorry, so in the past, all council used to get a copy of that road need study. And so I get it, I understand, but there was a significant switch. And I would say council wasn't brought up to speed or up whatever. There was this, like you had mentioned, different roads. Because of, I don't know the traffic, quite frankly, on a couple of the roads, I don't even know when they ever did those traffic studies, but it is, I think it's important for council to understand, whether we do it at budget or whenever we're doing it, that we need to understand that if this was a hard surfaced road, and so people are used to that higher level in the past, if we're not doing that same treatment, we should have that conversation so that our customers, our taxpayers, react in a positive way, not such a negative way that it has been in my experience in the last few years. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't know if there's a question or a comment in there that.
Well, it is. It's like, how do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can take that on the revisement. So when, when we come forward with the capital program, we can identify roads where we're changing the type of surface. So if it's going, up from, surface treatment to asphalt, and, we can identify those in the capital report. So council will understand and the public will understand a little bit better. And, similarly, if we have a road that's partially, maybe surface treated and partially hard surface, then we're going to take that all to surface treatment, which I think is what happened last year. We had a road that was, part of it was hard, was asphalt, and part of it was surface treatment, and then, new surface treatment went down. So we can identify those areas so it's a little bit more informative to the public.
I think I've seen a few hands up, a couple on this side, Councillor Zavitz, and I saw Mayor Kelly too, but I see, I'll go Councillor Robert, or Beaumaris first.
I think we're getting quite a bit off topic here. We're talking about roads, and the resolution has to do with arenas and fire station feasibility study, and staff is looking for direction on specifically related to that. So that would just be my comment at this moment.
Yes, and I acknowledge that. I think because of how this got presented, as part of it is about our level of service. Our resolution is directing something completely different. So it's almost like there's an information report combined with an actual action coming out of it, which is why I felt this is our chance to actually ask some of the questions as we try to understand how, in a comprehensive way, all of these pieces are interconnecting. And I think there was something on the supplementary agenda that you included that perhaps we could even see that visual of the roadmap to say that there's so many different studies that have happened that I think the questions are justified. We're just trying to understand how this package, I think, comes together so we can start making some of the decisions that I think our taxpayers are asking us to do, our constituents. So I don't know if you wanted to walk us through this, Director Colucci, and see how these, and why the resolution today is focused on the two things on the right.
Right. So, and through you, Madam Chair, so this roadmap was actually presented initially when the asset or the level service study was started. And we've just updated it to show where we are now. And if you look at, on the left side at the bottom, there are a number of studies that have been completed already that were, leading into this information. And, there's some that are listed there, the Transportation Master Plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the Fire Master Plan. And then, in addition to that, we had road needs study, we have OSIM structure studies, we have building condition assessments. So all of those studies led into the asset levels of service study. And then we prepared a capital level of service study. We started that project last April, and now we're on the road where we have staff have seen a draft framework, and we're providing comments to the consultant on that. We've done a lot of public engagement to obtain community engagement on the levels of service and their expectations for levels of service. And we're in process of preparing a financial strategy. So that's in the legislation, and we have to determine the life cycle cost of maintaining the proposed levels of service that we're going to provide to council in that report. And then when we present the levels of service, we're also going to present a financial plan that's going to look at how much money we need to invest going forward over the life of all of our assets to maintain that level of service that we're asking for. And because we're sort of at a point now where we have received the public engagement, we have got some good community input on not only the arenas but the community centers and the fire stations. Staff are proposing that we go off on our own, because this work will be done by staff and through community engagement, to look at the fire location study and the arena feasibility study and determine the next steps for that. So we have a lot of background information from the level of service study, but then we're looking at proceeding with that. And then the final phase, we'll be presenting the final asset management plan and finance study to committee and then to council, and then implementing that study going forward. And that will mean that we will be updating our capital plans, our 10-year capital plan, and our operating plans to meet all those level of service requirements.
So this, you can appreciate why we're all, trying to piece this, I will call it a puzzle together. For those of us who have been sitting around this table for a while, I think a lot of these questions become justified. It's like this asset management plan is the big puzzle, and there's many different pieces that are coming together somehow. And at some point we get tasked with making a decision of some sort. And my understanding is that maybe this is the question, but it's also intended to help shape the next part of our conversation here is, I think the resolution is to bring back the arena feasibility and fire station location studies to help bring that conversation back into the fold as we look to kind of finalizing some of that asset management plan. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So now I have Mayor Kelly, Councillor Roberts.
Thank you. And through you, I have a couple of comments, or I guess initially a question. There's a real science to surveying, and there's an even, I think, more difficult or challenging science to interpreting the results of a survey. So I'm curious to know, are we generally satisfied that we reached the right audience, that we penetrated sufficiently into the different components of that audience, that the survey results are meaningful?
Okay, thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, we did have our consultant look at, their communication team look at the survey results and look at the numbers of survey results. So based on our year-round population, we do meet the requirement for having a sample size that's suitable to obtain, information from that. Obviously with our seasonal residents, we're probably below that. We're at about 60% of the number for that, but based on our year round, which is really what, the assessments are based on and what our census numbers are based on. So we do meet the number.
And that's great. Thank you. Then just to follow up, and I've got a few. Do we try to discriminate those assets which are most likely touched by certain elements? For instance, it's just a suspicion that a large number of our seasonal residents don't use the arena, for instance. Because if you look, and I'm not focusing on any one particular issue here, but I don't see any hue or cry to replace or rebuild or restructure anything outside of roads and bridges, healthcare, and docks and wharves. Everything else, if it needs to be handled, it needs to be handled because it's unreliable, obsolete, broken, or high risk. It's not because the customer or the constituent is saying, you have to give us better parks. You have to give us it's really down to that. Those happen to be the elements that both the seasonal and the permanent residents have in common. They all drive on the same roads. So to the extent you survey a pool that has a mix, they all have something to say about roads. But a good number of them may have nothing to say about other assets that aren't used by certain contingents of the population. So my point simply is that what this highlights is a good part of the decisions that are ahead of us in terms of prioritizing and deciding how much we're willing to invest in that infrastructure is going to come down to our understanding of whether or not it's time. They're worn out, they're broken, they're breaking down, they're unreliable, they pose risks. Because I don't read this and see anybody screaming, we need more of this or we need more of that, except for roads, healthcare, and docks. So, it shifts the burden. It's a heck of a lot easier to respond to an outraged group that say, our community centers never did fit our needs. They're too small, they're too cramped. They're heated with wood. But I don't read this in any of this survey. I see this little bulge down the middle, except for those three. And that is going to be it's going to require a lot of leadership and a lot of vision to say, I know this might not be your priority, but something's going to fall on us if we don't invest now and invest big perhaps on some of these projects that didn't kind of flag themselves in the survey process. That's all I have to say.
If I could just because it's on the heels of this question, it's an interesting one. How has this consultant in the level of service, how do we incorporate from all these other different studies that have been done, all the feedback and survey results from those studies? Because I like if you participated in the fire station, for example, a location study, you might not have participated in this study. So the depth of the feedback on those studies or the transportation master plan, for example, right? You may not have participated. So how does that come together? Or is this part of the process of bringing these things back onto the conversation again?
Through you, the consultant did have, the full studies available and with all the public input. So, they have looked at that in the process of developing the level of service framework. And, we have to understand that, why did we decide to do a fire location study? And why did we decide to do an arena study? It's because, the arenas, the two buildings we have now are approaching the end of their useful life and they need, according to the capital plan, major capital investment to even maintain the buildings as they are. And, same with fire halls. We have a number of fire halls that are approaching the end of their useful life. And they need, to maintain those fire halls, we'll have to invest, significant capital amounts to maintain the numbers that we have now. So that's why we started down that road. And, there are recommendations in both of those reports that, include, building new arenas or building new fire stations. So yes, the public input we got is more geared to places that people use, like community centers and, the roads that everybody drives on, the parks. There wasn't really a lot of comment about arenas other than, we need arenas, right? We need washrooms. So, there were some comments there when you read the hundreds of questions to the open-ended questions. So, there were some comments there, but, generally, asset management is about maintaining our existing assets. So looking at, which ones should we need and which ones can we, divest ourselves of if they're, beyond their useful life.
Okay. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I ask if you could bring up the slide that we just had there, please, just for when I saw this slide last night or this morning, the penny sort of dropped for me. And I'm going to turn around and because I can't see the far side. But on the right, the fire station study and the arena feasibility came out of the two underneath the plans and studies. They were identified as our two hot buttons that we had to go after. But we also know that under sometime in the future, probably under the transportation master plan, we're going to hear about our work yards. Is that true? Is that where because Director Becking says our work yards are in trouble. Would there be a future study to talk about that?
Through you. So we did award a RFP for developing a yard location study. So we have a consultant that started work on that project now. So they're looking at our existing assets and, they'll be determining the needs and the future needs for that. And whether the 3 yards we have now are in the correct location, are of the size and the condition. Again, we know the condition of some of the facilities within the yards are at the end of their useful life and will require some large capital investments to maintain them, where they are or as they are, or, reconstruction in some cases because, they're in the condition. But that's why we're doing this study to make sure if we need to build a new yard, where should it go and what should it look like?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick one. Then under the parks and trails, we talked about community centers and stuff like that. So sometime in the future, we'll get to talking about all our community centers and whatever else there is, correct?
Right, through you. So, I guess the idea, once we have these studies going forward, we want to ensure that our long-term capital plan reflects what's recommended in the studies, right? So if we have recommendations in the recreation master plan, they're already in the capital plan, so that, in 5 years when we look at those studies again, we've actually achieved some of the goals that were recommended in those plans. So that's the same with any of the plans that we do.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zavitz, I do see you, but I just would like to ask CAO Pink also had his hand up.
Sorry, thank you. I think I just sense some perhaps confusion or just a broader high level understanding of the roadmap. Maybe if we could put that back up, and just the way I'm visualizing it, I'm certainly not the expert. Director Clucci is on this, but I think hopefully this helps committee. And I think I also wanted to comment just quickly on the survey questions, because I think that's an important part of this. So as we noted, we have done a number of larger studies, master plans, as we noted. The capital level of service study isn't necessarily going to answer how many community centers should we have, or how many fire stations, or how many arenas. But what it will do is set levels of service of what condition you want those assets to be in, those buildings or fire apparatus, et cetera. And from that will flow the financial implications of setting those proposed levels of service. Then the financial strategy flows from that. How do we now then afford those proposed levels of service? Do we need to take on debt, grant funding, et cetera, increase taxes? And then from that, again, you do not need to make decisions when you circle back to implementing the strategies, which is the last step, to make those decisions in a vacuum. You know what assets we have and the cost to maintain them at the levels of service you've set them at. And we would consider that when making those other decisions in implementation of those studies. So in recognition that it will take some time, a lot of further engagement to make decisions on the fire station location and arena feasibility, we recognize that we can come back and start planning out that process, as Mr. Moore did with the docks earlier today, and the Windermere playground, lay out a process to how to make a decision on those while it works concurrently, while we continue to fulfill, again, this level of service study and the financial strategy. I just very quickly on the consultation, because I think it's an important piece, and I completely appreciate, I think we need to be cognizant of sort of survey fatigue in the community, and we also need to be careful not to sort of govern or make decisions by poll necessarily either. But to Mayor Kelly's questions about, the input we've received to date, I think it's been helpful. I'm not diminishing that in any way. But I think we've seen challenges in other major projects, whether it's an official plan, or you'll likely recall the budget discussion. We had a public meeting when we came to the community at the onset of the project. It can be a challenge to engage the community and get meaningful input at that stage. But the next step will be to bring back the first draft, that framework, with proposed levels of service. And I think then when we go back to the community and ask, are we getting these right? I think you'll find that we'll likely get much more feedback than perhaps we did last fall when we asked for initial comments. We'll see how that plays out, but I think that is a very important part of this process, and I didn't want to lose sight of that. When we return, hopefully next month, with the level of service, the draft framework, the public engagement component after that, I think is, again, an important step of that process before we finalize it. Hope that helps clarify.
Thank you. Councillor Zavitz. And then I will read the resolution.
Thank you, through you. And I guess to David, thank you for crystallizing essentially what I think what we've all been thinking about for quite some time. I guess I would draw attention to Director Colucci's last words on this report under alternatives, which I always read, but I tend to reject. I look at this and, committee may opt not to resume consideration of the fire station location and arena feasibility studies at this time. I know for a fact that I think I've been asking for, 14 months, 16 months, however long we've been doing these plans and this analyses, if you will. What happens if we don't do, and so I can recall back to Director Becking's days and him trying to put dollars and cents on it. I'm certainly not asking that, but I wonder if I could put Director Colucci on the spot yet again and ask him to expand, even if he can, on, what happens if we opt to not, to resume consideration of these. We just go on with the fire halls and the arenas as they are, and if they're at the end of their useful lives, that's fairly irresponsible of us. What does that mean fiscally to this township?
Okay, Director Colucci, there was a lot in there.
Yeah, through you. So, let's talk about arenas first. Obviously, we have two older facilities there. And, this winter we had to shovel the roof twice on each arena because the snow load was too significant for the structure that's there, which is unusual for an arena because you would think that an arena could support the snow load. So, but that's, looking at the age of the building and how it's constructed. So if we don't proceed with the arena feasibility, study and looking at constructing a new facility or two new facilities, however it may end up being, we would have to maintain ice. We would have to maintain this older arena, which would require some significant capital expenditures. And, some of the things that are required would be a new concrete refrigeration floor and new roof. And, these are significant dollars, in the millions of dollars for both facilities. When you look at fire halls, similarly for fire halls, we have a number of buildings that are, they're not suited totally for the use. So trucks can't fit inside the building. We have trucks sitting outside in tents, and they need some significant work as well, like roofs and new CO2 systems. So there's a lot of work. So, that could require, so if we don't look at closing some fire halls, building some new fire halls, we'll have to maintain all of the old fire halls. And that could be a significant amount of capital expenditure as well. And then, and the alternative to that is maybe, when the building does get to the end of its useful life, it can't be repaired anymore and it has to be reconstructed. So then we're reconstructing a fire hall, maybe not necessarily in the best location for it because we haven't, finished the feasibility study.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, thank you. CAO Pink, you wanted to add?
Thank you. Just very briefly to that, I think the operative words in the alternative section are "at this time." Staff, I think, or I certainly have always intended to bring those matters back for decision. Those are important reports. Those are important analysis, and decisions were not made. All staff is seeking to do at the current meeting, the current recommendation is to resume consideration of those reviews and those studies currently. So to run concurrently while we conclude the asset management plan or the level of service study. So the key term there is at this time. I think there was always the intention to make those decisions. Today is really just about the timing.
Okay, Councillor Zavitz, do you have a new question? I was going to read the resolution and then I can come back if you had a comment.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Roberts. Be it resolved that staff be directed to report back to committee with an outline of next steps for both the arena feasibility and fire station location studies, with the aim to inform on recommended approaches to assist council in reaching final decisions. So are there any comments? Questions? Councillor Zavitz, no? Okay.
Well, okay.
I'll call.
Yeah, no,
Okay, Councillor Zavitz, yep.
Well, thank you. And through you, of course, and based on that, you know, the one thing we haven't done yet to our good public, and I do certainly agree, we've gone to them a number of times, we've asked them questions, but we've never framed up the question of, would you like to spend $47 million or $32 million and create, you know, this particular structure or that particular structure in a new place while we take the old ones down and repurpose them. So I think that's quite a different, it's quite a different set of questions to the public when they contemplate, I think as our CAO has said, that we would in fact, whether we do debt financing or however, we would be putting this township in very considerable debt. You know, I think as Director Colucci said, it could cost millions to update. It will cost tens of millions to provide new. I'm not suggesting I'm either way, but I just think the public may not well be conditioned to what road we're really going down. And I think that's very important that we're clear as heck with them about, you know, what really we're contemplating, which is new or old. And what does that mean numerically, financially, fiscally to this township and their taxes? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I've read the question. I will now call the question. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. That carries. Thank you very much, Director Colucci. We on to now. Mr. Cox, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of committee. So my report this morning relates to the request that we've received from the Waterfront Regeneration Trust to install a trailhead for the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail at Hannah Park here in Port Carling. As outlined in my report, the Waterfront Trail is currently being expanded through Muskoka, where it will primarily run along existing, mostly provincial and district roads. Port Carling is located at the center of the two proposed loops that will be in our township and therefore has been identified by the trust as an ideal spot for a trailhead. You can find examples of the proposed signage that the trust would like to install in the report. Staff are recommending that committee approve of this partnership, and I'd be happy to answer any questions committee may have about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee, I do have a resolution on this one as well, but are there any questions for Mr. Cox? Councillor Nishikawa and then Councillor Kent.
It's really, I guess it is a question. Are you working with the other municipalities on this as well? And I guess it's more, I'm just curious about the connection, for instance, that two of our neighboring towns might have.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the Waterfront Trust has essentially convened a small working group that consists of representatives from the different municipalities in Muskoka and Parry Sound District, where the trail is being expanded, and they're working individually with those municipalities to establish the appropriate connections within their own borders. So there is definitely communication going on.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, did you have a question?
Question for you. I really don't know much about this Great Lakes Waterfront Trail. I'm pretty new to this file, but we're looking at the maps. It's like, it's a trail that just goes along the highway and along the main roads. Explain to me what that's supposed to be and who's supposed to use that? Is it for biking? Is it for, like, what is it? At least in our area here, it doesn't do anything that we didn't have before. So.
Mr. Fox.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the trail itself it's a multi-purpose trail, so it's intended to be used for, as you say, cycling, hiking, any sort of active transportation is welcome on it. The intent of the project is to create a connected and signed trail that runs the entire length of the Canadian coastline of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence. The trust has the area through Parry Sound, Muskoka, sort of along the shore of Georgian Bay, is one of the last missing links in the trail. They already have signed routes that essentially run from the beginning of the St. Lawrence River up to the southern area of Simcoe County, and then starting again in Sudbury and running along the Highway 17 corridor across the north shore of Lake Superior. So the intent, even though there's not a huge amount of infrastructure being created as a result of the project, the intent is mostly around the signage and making sure that there's appropriate wayfinding so that people can make use of these routes.
But our specific area, if you don't file, our specific area seems to just be by your description, we're just a pass through. Like you just go through Muskoka and you get to Georgian Bay area, but there's nothing, you're not on the waterfront really. You're on the main road.
Okay.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, again, the intent of the trust, I believe, is to encourage people to explore the watershed more broadly. So it's not just a coastal trail. If you look in other parts of the province where there are, significant inland lakes, they do have routes that are associated with that.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, Councillor. Okay, question?
Well, I guess an extension of my first question to you was I wondered if this might also have something to do with some other active transportation routes that are being identified by the district. I'll leave it at that. So it's because we do have asks about the active transportation dollars at the district, I guess. Not that this requires that or whatever, but I just wondered, that's where I was going with. So for instance, we were looking for a connection between Gravenhurst and Muskoka Lakes, and then another connection we're looking right now from Huntsville to Muskoka Lakes. So that's where I was going. My question is, have those kind of conversations come up? Okay.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not specifically aware of what engagement the trust has had with the District of Muskoka on this, but I can certainly inquire about that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me read the resolution. Moved by Councillor McIntyre, seconded by Mayor Kelly. Be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes approves the Waterfront Regeneration Trust's request to install a trailhead for the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail in Hanna Park, and that staff be directed to work with the Waterfront Regeneration Trust to design, locate, and install the appropriate signage. So are there any comments? Councillor Bosemuth, Edwards, Nishikawa. Councillor Nishikawa.
Thank you, Chair. I think it was last year I was in Ireland and they have something called the Great Atlantic Way. And it runs up and down the west coast of Ireland and links all the various things that tourism, theirs is directed very much towards tourism. And it becomes a brand. And it's a very strong brand in the west coast of Ireland. And then businesses are actually built around it. So the music tour they went on was built around the Great Atlantic Way, and they incorporated that into their name. So this is, we've got the trail up the Niagara Escarpment. It's been around for a long time. I think this is probably what they're trying to achieve here, and I think it's great to be part of it. And signage helps.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Edwards.
I support it, but one of the questions I have is why Hannah's Park? And then you're gonna have to almost leave the trail to go down to Hannah's Park. Wouldn't it be better at the locks? That's
Mr.
one
Goss?
thing. Or on 118 at the little parkette, where Lake Muskoka comes in there. We have a park there. It's right on the trail. Like, if I'm on the trail, I'm not gonna go 3 or 4 blocks off to see, are we gonna put signage directing them to the signage?
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So the location was suggested to us by the trust on a review of a number of locations that they were considering, and the locks were one of the locations they considered. I believe the reason that Hannah Park was selected was primarily due to the access to parking that would be available for people making use of the trail in that area. Certainly, in terms of getting people to the trailhead, the trust and the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail has a fairly robust online presence where that people use to plan their routes, and so the intent would be to use that as well as wayfinding signage along the trail to ensure that it's easy to access.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nishikawa?
Thank you. Again, this is great. It's a lot interesting. Our Trans-Canada Trail, we couldn't quite do it so well in Muskoka Lakes, but one of the things, and I'm just reacting to a question that Sally had brought up, but I'm wondering if this is an opportunity where the Parks and Trails committees in the past had a trail route plan through Lake Rosso. And it was actually set up originally from the Watershed Council as a little fundraiser. And I'm thinking from our own municipality, we could create that hiking or that trail route by canoe or boat or whatever you want to do. And would this be the time that I asked that we could bring that forward to James and talk about for future considerations?
Okay, so maybe what I can, it's an interesting question. I think it probably touches upon the new Parks and Trails Standards Manual. I think there's lots of discussion in there as well. Maybe what we can do is let's make a decision on this particular resolution, and then under new business, we can bring that up if that's something that we would want to direct. I think it's probably with Mr. Moore coming back to discuss the options. Would that satisfy?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have read the resolution. Are there any other comments on this? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. We are now under new business, and I just heard from you. I will put it towards the end of the conversation, but we don't need to do it today. But the comment has been noted and heard. The first two, we didn't have any asks, so unless anybody really has a strong opinion on Food Bank or Snowmobile, I'd like to recommend that we move on to 12C, which is the resolution on the garbage bag tags. Okay. So I do have a resolution here. It was moved by Councillor Nishikawa and seconded by Councillor Burry. As a way of introduction, would one of you two like to introduce this resolution?
So there's a concern, a lot of concern about the islanders, as well as, well, year-round cottage, or not year-round cottagers, but seasonal cottagers, and that in fact, they're being restricted very much. And what we're suggesting is to allow bag tags to them. So they would be given a year's worth of bag tags. Knock yourself out how you use it, sort of thing. But quite frankly, they've already paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the district to put any more obstacles in their way to get rid of their waste. Again, I look at some of these property owners and they do just use a waste facility and their roads. They don't get the opportunity to use other infrastructures and things. But it is fair and equitable that those taxpayers be treated in a manner that is respecting the tax dollars that they pay.
Thank you. Councillor Bree, unless you wanted to add to that, I could read the resolution and then we can have Councillor Burry?
I'm quite happy to talk at length about this, but I'm recognizing we've got a few minutes before a lunch break. This is all about equity. The district has been mucking around, sorry, technical term, changing, and change is hard. The way waste management is provided. I am a firm believer that one size does not fit all, and that the Township of Muskoka Lakes should be given the opportunity to have a bag tag mechanism, because we don't have everyone getting curbside collection. Some of the docks are a little far away for the trucks to get to, and they don't have appropriate flotation. So we've got a number of issues going on with the district with solid waste, not the least of which is changing to the color of bags. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. Why not at least allow the Township of Muskoka Lakes to have bag tags? I'm going to give a specific example. I have 7 license plates, which means if I want to, I can take 7 bags a week to the transfer station and no one will know the better, because the mechanism for tracking bags is the license plate. That is not fair to the person that does not have a car or that doesn't have the, traveling past the transfer station 6 or 7 times a week, the ability to take that. So putting on tags just levels the playing field for all of the Township of Muskoka Lakes. I actually don't understand why it wouldn't work within the towns as well. It seems to work for the city of Toronto, so I'm just kind of not sure why it doesn't work for here.
Thank you. I think what I will do is let me read the resolution. I see Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Kent. Moved by Councillor Nishikawa, seconded by Councillor Burry. Be it resolved that the District Municipality of Muskoka's waste collection program permits residents with curbside green bin collection 1 garbage bag weekly or 2 bags bi-weekly in the winter months, and 2 garbage bags weekly or 4 bags bi-weekly in the winter months for residents without curbside green collection. And whereas the use of bag tags on an annual basis would achieve the same waste reduction objectives and would result in a more equitable delivery of service to seasonal residents. Now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes requests the district modify their program to a tagging system providing residents with an annual allotment of tags in the amount of 52 for residents with curbside green collection and 104 for residents without curbside green bin collection. So at this point, I will open it up by Councillor Zavitz and then Councillor Kent.
Thank you, and through you, I just want to commend my 2 district councillors. I just think this is the kindest and most considerate motion you could ever put forward. Very well thought out, and I know that the people that are a large percentage of our tax base will be very appreciative of this. Now, hopefully, it will go through, but I'm very supportive of it. So thank you very much for that effort.
Councillor Kent?
I was going to say a similar comment. I think this is a brilliant suggestion because there's, it would even benefit people who are not seasonal users of their cottage. People who have entire family in for Christmas for 2 weeks and they use tons of garbage. And then the rest of the year, there's just mom and dad there and not using much garbage. It allows them to utilize the system to meet their requirements on everybody's individual and everybody uses it differently. I love this suggestion and thank you. I'd love to hear what the objections are when the district says they can't do it. I'll be interested to hear that.
Okay, so Councillor Edwards, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Burry.
Yeah, I just hope the district don't charge for the bag tags.
Okay.
Because if the other towns aren't doing it, we shouldn't be charging for them other than over and above the 52 or the 104. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Roberts.
Yes, and we are seeing people dropping garbage off at the Milford Bay Community Center, bags, and the 2 ladies go out and pick it up with their sons, and then they have to dispose of it. So this is what's going to happen if they're only allowed 1 bag. So I think the tags are a it's a great thing, but what would the cost be, putting on a district hat, to the district to do this?
Well, I think that information would ultimately come back. I mean, this is a district decision, and I think how this is saying is, as a council, we are supporting our district councillors to go back and say this would be fitting our need here in the township, and we would ask that you come back with that kind of level of detail. I'm just trying to not have to respond with information we don't have at our fingertips. Is that fair? I'm looking at you because this is your committee. So I don't know, Mayor Kelly?
I would suggest it would cost a heck of a lot less than the taxes we're paying to have the
Yeah.
service provided.
Okay, Councillor Burry.
Thank you. And through you, I'd like to point out that I think we may get some beneficial unintended consequences of going to a bag tag. I know there are people that use very little and can go weeks at a time without taking a full garbage bag to the transfer station or leaving it out. I think we may find that human behavior, if everybody in the district went to tags, would be far more judicious on when to put out a bag and when to put out just recycling or just organic matter. And that we may in fact find out that the conservation mentality actually increases because you've got those tags, and after that you're paying $12 a bag. So I actually think that I'm not convinced that certainly the data presented to the Public Works Committee to date has not suggested that they've even contemplated the potentially beneficial unintended consequences of human behavior.
Okay, thank you. So I feel like there's a general sense of thanks and gratitude to our district councillors for bringing this forward to us today and representing us all. I've read the resolution, and now I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried.
Could I thank the clerk for putting together a well-constructed resolution?
It's very well done. Moving on to the next one, which is the Footsbay waste collection. And I think maybe what I will do here is read the resolution first, and then if Councillor Burry or Councillor Kent need to add any flavor, that they can. Moved by Councillor Burry, seconded by Councillor Kent. Whereas the District of Muskoka, District Municipality of Muskoka's Lakeside Waste Collection Service was halted in the community of Footsbay as a result of limited use by residents during a trial period with insufficient prior notice. And whereas those water access residents on Lake Joseph must now travel a great distance to utilize the nearest remaining lakeside waste collection service, now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Muskoka Lakes requests the district continue the Footsbay Lakeside Waste Collection Service for a 2025 trial period with improved communication leading up to the summer season. So I feel like it's somewhat self-explanatory, but Councillor Burry or Councillor Kent, either one of you want to make a comment or?
I do not use the Footsbay, so I have no vested interest in doing this. But we have looked around the entire township of Muskoka Lakes, and this appears to be the only collection space affected negatively by what's going on. We've checked other areas. I know the clerk and several of other staff check to make sure that it's not, it is only a Footsbay problem currently. So we're trying to address at least the one space, which does have a large number of islanders coming to it. If we can just figure out a better mechanism over the long term, so not changing it for this summer is the easiest solution for everybody, given that we need to understand what the long term is. But I don't think the district has enough data specifically with this one landing, and so that's why I've brought this forward at this point.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments, committee? Okay, Councillor Nishikawa?
Sorry, I think I just had a concern because they did get it, like they were getting the garbage truck sitting there for 3 hours situation, and then not like then. So I'm just like, what they had before was what I was trying to understand. What they had before, was it a bin kind of situation? Because we have the same situation that's going to happen in another marina situation. So
okay, Councillor Kent, did you want to add comment?
Yeah, hopefully I can answer that. I don't know the exact timing, but it wasn't last summer because last summer it was gone. The summer before that, all of a sudden, like literally out of nowhere, a sign went up right at the public dock there that said, we'll be here every Sunday morning from X to X. I think it was 10 to 1 or something. And don't quote me on the hours. Nobody knew about it. It lasted for less than 6 weeks. The communication was very poor. I believe that and the right answer might be that there's not enough use there. And the Tower Road transfer station is not so far away. But that, of course, requires a totally different level of, you got to get in your car, you got to bring it down to the dock, you got to dump your garbage in the car, and you got to drive to the transfer station. So my suggestion to Peter back a year ago was, could we not try a proper trial with the district's consent for 8 weeks in the summer, where the Foots Bay Marina and other people in the community will make sure this is communicated properly. And this is a love it or leave it. If you don't use it and we don't get enough data that's meaningful, then take it away. But don't take it away without ever telling us you're going to take it away and no understanding of what the service was. So I think it wasn't done particularly well the first time. So give us one more chance. And the community either steps up and uses it or they don't.
Thank you.
The background.
So I've read the question. I'm going to call the question now. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Great. At this point, I am going to ask, I believe is it Director Clucci again, coming up to the podium to take us through your very comprehensive on the supplementary agenda update on the Muskoka River watershed conditions.
Well, it's now afternoon. So, good afternoon. So I will be giving you an update on the spring freshet. And the first thing we should all understand is that the 2025 spring freshet has not started yet. So, and the weather forecast is looking good for it not to start in the next week or so. First item, so next slide. Snowpack conditions as of March 1st. So the M&R does snow surveys every 2 weeks, and they will increase that, as we get closer to the freshet. And they do an analysis of not only the depth, but also the water content of the snow. So there's a little example there of, if you have depth of snow of 60 centimeters and that equals 22% of water content, right? So, and they do that measurement. And if you go to the next slide. So they take snowpack at 4 different locations, and the average of that snowpack gives us the current level of snowpack. And as of March 1st, the snowpack was at 105% of normal. And if you go to the next slide, so the total snowpack average is 155 millimeters of water content, and that's about 105% of the average for this time of year. And there are specific areas within the watershed that have greater than 105%. They did some specific snow measurements. So some places have 180% of the snowpack, but on average, we're at 105%. So next I'll speak about the water levels. So this is from the hydrograph, which is posted publicly on the ministry website. So anybody can view this. And if you look at Bala Bay at Bala, we're actually operating below the normal operating zone quite a bit at that location. So they have been working to lower the water level, and you can see where it's been, steady. And then, at one point there in the late February, they started lowering it. And that's just based on the chance that the freshet is coming. If you go to the next slide. And this is Lake Muskoka at Beaumaris. So also that is operating at the bottom of the operating zone, the normal operating zone, and almost to the bottom of the total operating zone, but not below it. And next slide. is Lake Rosso at Port Carling. So that is still near the bottom of the normal operating zone. And again, they are working on lowering that as well. So, and then next slide. So this is the 14-day weather forecast as of yesterday, I think I took it. So if you look at the long range weather forecast, we are seeing some warmer temperatures in the daytime and still cooler temperatures at night. So, you know, this is good for a slow melt of the snow, because if we have warm temperatures during the day and still cooler temperatures at night, you know, we won't get a big fast thaw. And the next slide is the precipitation forecast. So again, we are seeing some risk of precipitation over the weekend, 10 millimeters on Saturday. And then next week there is, you know, a little bit of snow and a little bit of rain mix, but still with the temperatures and the volume of rain anticipated, it shouldn't have a great effect on the freshet. And next slide. These are the 3-month long-range forecasts for from Environment Canada. So the left one is the temperature. So again, for our area, it's predicting cooler than normal temperatures for this time of year. And the right one is precipitation, and it's anticipating lower than normal precipitation for this time of year, which is also good for the freshet. And next slide. So the M&R does put out a number of different bulletins. So often they'll do a watershed condition statement. So, you know, when I receive those, I send them out to council, so you'll receive them. And the condition statement is just, you know, they talk about water safety. So, you know, there's some melting snow, there's some rain, you know, you might have, you know, ice conditions are poor. And then the next one is a flood outlook. So that might be where their prediction is that, you know, they're in the future, there could be some flooding. And then you'll have a flood watch and a flood warning. And both of those are each one a little higher level. So again, they send those out whenever their predictors say that there could be a flood coming. And they'll send those out. And whenever we receive those, we will send them out to council and to the leadership team. So this is a summary of the current conditions. So basically the spring freshet has not started in the Muskoka River watershed, and it usually does arrive late March or early April, and that will be dependent on the weather, of course. And the snow depth is averaging 63 centimeters, and which is about 5% above average for this time of year. And the water levels in most of the managed lakes in the watershed, and you know, these are managed by the M&R, so they are trending to the bottom of the normal operating zone. And M&R is working closely with the hydroelectric operators and the dam operators to ensure that they maintain at the bottom of that normal operating zone. And some areas have received significantly higher snowfall, but overall in the watershed that we're still only at 105% of the average. And watershed conditions do evolve on a daily basis. So M&R will be monitoring the weather and the weather predictions, and you know, as will staff. You know, and if things change, then we can take extra precautions. I won't read these all, but these are just key messages that the M&R wants us to use with conversation with our ratepayers and constituents. So basically, you know, the M&R manages water levels, and you know, will it flood this spring? Well, nobody really knows, but the scope and scale of the freshet is impossible to predict at this time, and you know, we monitor that on a daily basis. And next slide. And then, you know, here are some recommendations for protecting property and how to help. And next slide. So again, the dam operators across Muskoka River watershed work collaboratively to manage the system in a safe, responsible manner, consistent with the Muskoka River watershed management plan. And, you know, so M&R and all the dam operators work together to do that. So the township really has nothing to do with the operation of the dams. It's really all directed by M&R. And next slide. Again, more messages. Next slide. And so this is about ice safety. So, you know, no ice is safe ice. It doesn't matter the time of the year. So ice conditions change rapidly. And right now you can see with a little bit of warm weather and, near shore, there's a lot of open water because where people have bubblers around their docks, that bubbler has moved out a long way. So where, in the winter when it was, very cold, it might be 5 feet from the end of the dock. Now it's 40 feet from the end of the dock. So you have to be very cautious there. And any questions?
Well, thank you very much. Okay, committee, that was a pretty comprehensive overview. And for those of you who are newer to the spring freshet season, you can see the level of data and information that our staff are recipients of. So questions, comments, Councillor Bosemuth, Councillor Zavitz.
My question is, who is ultimately responsible for the water levels? The chart you had up sounds like very much it's a collaborative agreement between the MNR and the dam and power operators. But in the end, who has an ultimate decision if they're not agreeing?
Thank you.
So through you, so, there is the Muskoka Watershed Management Plan, which outlines, every single day, the operating zone, the normal operating zone, upper and lower of each lake in the watershed. And, so the dam operators working collaboratively with the MNR staff will monitor those elevations. So, earlier in February, MNR, asked the dam operators to lower the water levels to the bottom of the normal operating zone, and the dam operators agreed with that. So, as far as the normal operating zone, that is set in the watershed plan, which was recently updated because some of the dams actually changed their operation. So they actually have mechanical log systems now. So they have mechanical gates instead of having to change wooden logs. So they updated the plan to take into account for those mechanical systems that can react a little bit quicker to for a change in water level. But ultimately, none of these dams are actually designed for flood control. They're power operating dams, so they're designed to make power. And the fact that they can change the water level is an ancillary use to those dams. So in a flood occurrence, where we have a lot of rainfall that's coming through the system, sometimes because they're not flood control dams, they can't actually control the level enough. So that's where in 2019 we did have that flood that occurred. And even though the water was at the bottom of the normal operating zone, and in some cases below the normal operating zone, the amount of water that entered the system resulted in the water levels raising higher.
Sorry, Councillor Zavitz and then Mayor Kelly.
Thank you. And through you, just wanted to say, great report. And I think for where we are and when we are here, I'm going to say that the township, I do believe that David, the mayor and our director of public works, while the MNR, is wholly responsible, I think that the effort that our team has put into this, that I'm aware of, that I understand, I feel very good about where the water level is. I think it's exciting to know that the water level is quite low. I guess I would just say to Nick, what is your thought on sandbags, and when are you going to pull that trigger to the public in terms of, if you're interested, we have sandbags at this particular place or that place. I know Gravenhurst has already been announcing that to their folks, just in case. I mean, for what? So have you thought about that?
Okay, so our response in the event that there's water level issues.
So through you, so the township does have a store of sandbags that were purchased at the last flood in 2019. So I believe we have 30,000 sandbags that are empty. And we do have a plan that, in the event that there is a flood forecast, that we will not only have staff start filling sandbags, but also get volunteers to come and fill sandbags, and also let the residents know that we have sandbags available for them to fill. And we'll set up locations. We've already planned out where they will be. There'll be, something in Bala and something here in Port Carling. And probably, one of our works yards also will be available, and we can have sand stockpiled there for the bags to be filled. So, staff have already worked on that plan. So when the time comes, we're ready to enact it.
Thank you. Mayor Kelly?
Thank you. And through you, a couple of comments in response both to Councillor Bosenworth and Councillor Zavitz. Ultimately, the Muskoka River Water Management or the Watershed Management Plan is supposed to operate almost on its own. So there are definitions and defined circumstances whereby action is supposed to be taken. But to answer your question, in the event that there is just something unpredictable, unstoppable, the minister has the discretion to step in. I think not the minister, the ministry has the discretion to step in and take steps as they deem necessary if there is a threat to human safety, for instance, infrastructure, environmental damage, those kinds of issues. So the biggest issue that we tend to forget, it's not as easy as opening the gates and letting the water flow free, because the damage downstream through the Moon River is going to be extraordinary if that happens. This has to be done in a measured and controlled and thoughtful manner, and with fingers crossed and prayers said that nothing like 3 consecutive days of 22 degrees Celsius with pouring rain happens all at the same time. That, there's really almost impossible to work with that. The other comment in response to Councillor Zavitz's suggestion, I may be just me, but I've been sort of tangentially involved and now directly involved for a few years on this watershed program, working with Adam Wakefield, who is the manager of the program in Parry Sound, Sudbury, Parry Sound, and for the ministry. And it just seems to me that in the last year, there has been a much more open communication, much better flow of communication. I think we are able to reach out, get questions answered. I'd like to make sure we don't all write letters all at the same time. Let's focus and energize ourselves through Director Colucci. He's the spokesperson, and I think it's rather than have the same question asked 50 times. But something I think has changed internally there, and maybe it's Nick, but they are much more amenable to discussion and sharing information with us, which is welcome and happy. Last point, in case you missed it, and I don't know how you could have. The last day before the writ was dropped on the last provincial election, there was an announcement that certain provisions of the water management plan would be reopened and considered for revision or amendment. A little unclear what and to what extent. My guess is it would be some sort of review of the data to support adjustments to either the high end or the low end of NAWS or both. Or alternatively, an adjustment to when action is to be taken as the water level goes up or down, I suppose. But the terms of reference for that kind of review, obviously all work had to stop on that for the election itself. But they hopefully will get a new minister sworn in on I think it's the 24th, 27th, I forget when that is, and get back to work. And I'm sure there'll be periods of public consultation. I've been told that. There'll be lots of opportunity for everyone to understand what's being proposed and to respond to it and address it directly through the process. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I actually was going to. Thank you very much. And maybe we could do a quick a tutorial of a tool that is on the district's website, just very quickly, because I think if anybody is.
Laura has it up, so we can do that tutorial if you want.
Right, because I think with what this, and I'm just going to summarize what I think I've heard while this is loading, is that currently the levels are low. In fact, I think they're below the operating zone in some cases. So the water levels are currently low throughout this portion of the watershed.
Yes.
That what we really don't know is what's going to happen in the next month or two from a rainfall. So the stuff coming out of the sky at this point, that what we really are hoping for is a slow melt. So that's something that you indicated throughout your report is being monitored. I mean, that's something that's outside of our control, but it's something that is being monitored. And I think what Mayor Kelly just summarized is just the improved, I would say, connection, particularly between the two staff groups of our staff, the ministry staff, trying to make sure we're on this as to the best of our ability. And I think your presentation kind of indicated a lot of that. So with that said, this is also a new tool that I think is just helpful for all of us to know, and certainly members of the public can now go more easily and see exactly where things are at. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you.
So through you, so this tool is actually on the district GeoWeb public site, so anybody can view it. And not only you can see the hydrographs, which are a model of the same hydrographs that are on the ministry website, but you can also see flood elevations on there as well, right? So all those things are available. Takes a while to download though. Yeah. So this is Bala Bay at Bala again. So it's the same. It's today's information, but it is below the normal operating zone. And if you go to the next tab, it's actually Beaumaris. And then you see it's near the bottom of the normal operating zone. And then the next tab is Lake Russell. And also, at the bottom half of the normal operating zone. And then there's also tabs there for Lake of Bays, Mary Lake, Fairy Lake, and Go Home Lake. But the interesting thing is if you, at the bottom there, you see the highlighted portion, you can actually drag that bar over and you can change the time. So if you go there, you can shorten it. If you go to the left, you can go back in time and you can see actually historic data. And if you want to go back to look at 2019, you can actually go back to 2019 and see what the levels were there. So it's got the data going back as long as they've had the hydrograph monitoring. So.
Well, thank you. This is it's it's a great tool, and it's a visual tool. It's real live data, which is fantastic. Just a question, is that available on our website just to direct people to, or?
Yeah, we can add it to the website, and there's a press release going out today about the spring shed, so it'll be actually attached there in a link to you. But yeah, it's good, and thanks to CAO Pink for pushing the district to get this working.
Thank you. Thank all of you for your focus and effort on this. Are there any other questions or comments on that particular tool? I suspect that as we all start using it, we may have further questions. So thank you. Moving on now to the next section, which is the district updates. So I'm going to just ask very quickly if there's any update from the district councilors that they would like to provide. No? Are there any questions from community or committee members on any items on the district agendas? We are hearing from the district chair this afternoon anyway, so if we have further questions, we can probably ask them at that point too. Okay, that said, I think we can move on to the next portion of our agenda, which is adjourning. Oh, no. I did? How did I miss something? Oh my goodness, community events. And you're so keen. Okay, Mayor Kelly, and then Councillor Edwards.
Well, let's care about community events. I would like to just simply make a shout out of support to a group called the Port Carling Pre-Novice Synchro skating team. They skate under the banner of the Ice Lightning. They finished their regular competition schedule this year in first place.
Wow.
Isn't that great? Yeah. At some point in time, they were around 10th place. So they work really hard. They train at the arena here and they skate a lot at the arena here. I think it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. It's a group of 16 young women. Youngest is in grade 8. Eldest is, I think, in 12th grade, high school age. And the only reason I wanted to call it out is other than to thank them and to congratulate them, is the fact that on March 23rd, they're skating in the provincials. They're going into the provincials. I believe they're in Stratford, Ontario. They are in first place as they enter that competition. And I certainly want to do two things. I want to thank them for all that they're doing to promote our community, to be leaders in our community. I want to thank their family members, the moms and the dads who are driving them and looking after them, coaching, training, all of the work that goes into it. And there are a lot of other supports in the community, other clubs and agencies that are helping to put some funding behind this, I'm sure. So I want to wish them all the best. And I, on behalf of council, certainly hope that they have great success in Stratford on the 23rd, and wish them all the best. Thank you.
That's great. Councillor Edwards.
Yes, excuse me. April the 9th, there's a daffodil luncheon at the Raymond Hall. It's for Andy's house, the proceeds, so that's that one. And of course, the Lions Sugar Bush is, I think it's the third weekend in April, it's Saturday and Sunday at Beaches Sugar Bush. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, committee, are there any other community events? Okay, seeing none, I will read this resolution. Moved by Councillor Roberts, seconded by Councillor McIntyre. Be it resolved that this meeting adjourn at 12:25 p.m. Don't say anything, Mayor Kelly. And the next regular meeting of the General Finance Committee will be held on Wednesday, April the 16th, 2025 at 9 a.m. or at the call of the chair electronically from the Council Chambers Municipal Office in Port Carling, Ontario. So just before I call this question, I would like to ask, just while the screen is still on, at what point would you like us to come back to the chambers for council?
I'd like to be back for council at 1:15 if we could, please.
1:15, we will be starting council. Read the question. All those in favor?